good afternoon. We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the General Policy Committee of the Gainesville City Commission. The date is January 14th, 2021. We need to adopt the agenda. I'd like to make a request that we hear the comp plan engagement item first. We do have our consultants with us, and we'd like to get that heard so they can go on about their work. HRNA advisors are with us. Other than that, I think everything is pretty straightforward. Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we adopt the agenda with one modification, that we have the comp plan update as the first discussion item.
Okay, motion by Hayes Santos, seconded by Ward, that we adopt the agenda, moving that one item up to the front of the agenda. Mr. Feldman, did you have any comments there?
No, sir.
Okay. Adam, any members of the public?
No, sir. There is no public comment at this time.
Okay, and I see Commissioner Johnson has joined us. Commissioner Johnson, I don't know if you were in for the motion. It's just to adopt the agenda, and we were going to relocate one item, the comp plan update, to first on the agenda. Otherwise, it's as is. Do you have any questions or comments?
No, great. Thank you.
Okay, then let's go ahead and move to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons?
Aye.
Commissioner Sacco is absent. Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Commissioner Ariola?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayes Santos?
Aye.
And Mayor Poe.
Aye, that motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Sacco absent. All right, then our first item, I think actually we have some minutes. Yeah, minutes from the December 10th meeting. Are there any questions, comments, or is there a motion to adopt the minutes, approve the minutes? Okay, motion by Ward, second by Simmons to approve the minutes from December 10th. All in favor, I'm sorry, that's roll call vote.
Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Commissioner Ariola?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayes Santos?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons? Commissioner Sacco is absent. Mayor Poe.
Aye, that motion passes 6-0 with Sacco absent. All right, so our next item will be the update on the comprehensive plan and specifically the engagement process. And we have with us today our consultants from HRNA advisors. And I'm really excited to hear where we are with this. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Feldman.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say those same exact words, but just a little bit more of a backdrop. If the commission remembers, we have retained the services of HRNA to undertake what I think will be a first of a kind, at least in the state of Florida, update to our comprehensive plan where we integrate equity into everything that we do from a planning standpoint. And part of that process is to have a vigorous engagement with our neighbors and other stakeholders through this process. So the first task that we have assigned to HRNA is really to develop that engagement strategy. And before we launched, we wanted to do a check-in with the City Commission to make sure that our expectations and direction are consistent with what the Commission's expectations are for this process moving forward. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Persons and HRNA and let them take you through the presentation.
All right, great. Mr. Persons, welcome. Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too. Andrew Persons, Interim Director, Department of Sustainable Development. I don't really have anything to add from what the manager said. I can just say from my perspective, and I think I can speak for the rest of the team on the city side that's been working on this. I think this is one of the most exciting and potentially transformative projects that I've worked on in my career with the city, and I'm really excited to really kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the work in this coming year. I think you'll be very happy with with the direction that we're going, and stay tuned. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lydia with HRNA.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and very happy to be back here virtually with you all today to talk about our next steps for the comprehensive plan update. I'm, again, Lydia Gaby, project manager for HRNA on this effort, and I'm joined on the line by my colleague, Eri Furusawa, who will be co-presenting with me today, and she's been leading a lot of the research and analysis as we have gone through this process. Eri, do you want to go ahead and share the screen? Okay, so next slide, please. So today we'll talk through the results of our diagnostic work, really sort of focusing on what the plan must do in order to help the city create racial equity via and using the comprehensive plan as a vehicle for change. So we'll be talking about, our sort of diagnosis for what that actually means and can look like. And then in the second, regard, our approach and process for how we'll update the plan in order to sort of reach those goals. And on the third sort of aspect of our conversation today, where we'd like your input and support throughout the process as we move forward. Next slide. So, what must the plan do? What must we do? Thinking back to the resolution that called for this comprehensive plan update, there are a few specific things that in order to achieve this mission, the updated plan must include. So, there's on the one hand, a goal of, through this process, establishing equity goals and policies for all elements of the comprehensive plan, as Andrew mentioned, taking the opportunity through this project to look at every aspect of how we are sort of planning with community and planning forward to address racial equity sort of at the forefront and core of what are we trying to achieve and who are we prioritizing, who's involved. As the second aspect of that you'll see in the middle is this, the racial equity and social equity planning will not only sort of aim to distribute fairly and evenly the benefits and burdens across different people in the city of growth and investment, and also, include a more equitable decision-making process where people feel that they have, and, in reality do have more of a say over what is decided about, what will be invested in and how that is meant to improve their lives. And the third thing we'd wanted to call out is that the plan will explicitly name and address the harms that we have seen historically and that are sort of currently happening to sort of advance and, further entrench institutional and structural racism in a couple of different regards. So this is a little bit of a summary of the resolution and the mandate for this project that really shaped the way that we've designed this process that we'll walk through more today. Next slide. In terms of the work that we've done to date, thus far throughout this process, we've conducted interviews, research, independent analysis, and brought together, guidance and best practices from a variety of different stakeholders. So what you're seeing here is, we've done a couple of different things, lots of interviews with folks inside the city. We've had one-on-one conversations with all of you on the commissioner's court. We talked with, other cities about their sort of reflections on the comprehensive planning processes that they've been through and what they learned, what they reflected on the process, what could have gone better there. And we've been sort of working through a series of kind of detailed workshops with Andrew and, others on the city side to sort of think about, what is all of this telling us and where are we planning to move forward to kind of address everything that we've learned about where the plan currently falls short and what's the potential of a redesigned plan to achieve a different end. Next slide. Just recalling again back to those conversations we had with you all sort of earlier in this process, your input has really done a lot to kind of shape how we've designed sort of our work and our goals for how we sort of bring this project forward. So on the one regard, in terms of the outcomes, we heard from you all that it's important for us to tell a clear story about what exactly the comprehensive plan is. Why does that matter to everyone in the city, and especially to people who feel that planning has never sort of benefited them and can't have that power as we move forward into the future? And how will this redesigned version of the plan explicitly address the inequity that we've uncovered? In terms of outcomes, we also want to make sure that we're translating the goals of equitable development and racial equity into concrete actionable policies. so we aren't resulting in just really nice sort of visionary language that's disconnected from how that will move forward. We're really looking forward to making sure that those connections between what's the aspiration and how are we going to bring that forward are really tight. And the third aspect of the outcomes is just to make sure that the plan is very clear and accessible. We heard from you all loud and clear that it's really important that the resulting documents, the way that we talk about this process, we're emphasizing things like plain language and accessibility to make sure that anyone who wants to understand what the comprehensive plan is and how it's going to impact them are easily able to do so. In terms of the process, we also heard from you all that it's important to make sure that we're hearing from people in historically underrepresented neighborhoods, those who've been disconnected from past planning processes, and also that we're collaborating with people outside of the city so that at the end of this process, we've done what we can to build relationships and partnerships that will ultimately be really critical in the implementation process. We're using this sort of project in order to sort of set ourselves up very well for the taking forward of this work into implementation. Next slide. Another thing that we've been doing in preparation for the launch is we've been working with the city to finalize the sort of overarching identity for this project. And we're excited about Imagine Gainesville as the brand that we'll be taking forward to represent this effort as a really sort of positive visionary take on if we were to sort of imagine a better Gainesville, an equitable Gainesville, what would that be? And next slide. And here's what I'll turn it over to Ari to kind of talk in more detail about, again, this kind of diagnosis as to, where the plan, can sort of alter what it's done in the past in order to sort of create racial equity in the future.
Thank you, Lydia. And commissioners, thank you again for giving us the space to walk through this with you today. My name is Ari Furusawa. I'm from HRNA Advisors. Continuing from what Lydia introduced, we took everything that we've heard from you, the resolution that's been a strong guide for us in this process, as well as the many interviews we've had with the city experts. And we've consolidated that to identify three key pillars that we will use to guide this effort. So of course, starting again with centering Black Gainesville and residents who have been underrepresented in city planning. Another key pillar that we wanted to emphasize is to involve the entire city organization. So making sure that this is not an initiative that lives under one department, but is something that touches all departments within the city to create these cross-agency collaborations and making sure that each department will have ownership of Imagine Gainesville, both in its planning process and the implementation of this. And thirdly, to make sure that this process and the plan will generate accountability and action. So this might entail making clear connections between the actions that we will list in the plan and who will be responsible for implementing those actions, making clear targets and defining success for each of these actions, and making sure that the plan will include a system in which the city can track progress against each of these goals and to hold itself accountable. So I'll go through in a little bit more detail for each of these pillars. So starting with Center Black Gainesville, and as we've heard multiple times, we are starting with the basis that Black residents have been harmed by multiple discriminatory actions, which continue to have impacts and create inequities in every aspect of life in Gainesville today. But we've also found that despite these inequities, the comp plan as it's currently written and designed does not have an explicit racial equity lens. So we're starting from there. And to give a few examples of where the disconnect is between the current comp plan and employing this racial equity lens. One example we like to bring forward is the housing element, which is one element of the arc of all the elements in the comp plan. So the overall goal listed for this element is, as it's underlined here, to encourage basically adequate and affordable housing for all income groups. So obviously, racial equity is not a central goal here. But to even bring that further, it also fails to address the history of why we're here and what brought us here, including the exclusionary zoning and the racial covenants in Gainesville. It also fails to address the present day residential segregation that we've seen along the racial and ethnic lines, as well as the disparities in home ownership and rent burden across, again, racial and ethnic lines. And we also, this is something, what we're showing on the right here is the study that was conducted by the University of Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research that found, this was focused on Alachua County, but found that there are also disparities in housing quality for Black and white Gainesvillians. So another example of this is the public schools element. And of course, there's complexities here because of the division of roles between the city and the Alachua County School Board. And the focus of this element as it's currently written is mostly to on the city's collaboration with the school board to plan for school capacity. And there's currently no reference about educational quality or outcomes. So another way that the update could incorporate racial equity from in this element is to first name the history of residential segregation and current day segregation in Gainesville, as well as the gaps in educational attainment and performance. And to take it even further, the plan could guide equitable investments in school resources based on the gaps in need that currently exist today. So these are some of the examples in which we envision the update could start to center racial equity in all of its plan elements. So moving to the second pillar about involving the whole city organizations, we think this is important for a number of reasons, but a key reason is that the current plan in its design is not including important elements of life in Gainesville that have been identified as priorities by Gainesvillians. And also acknowledging that many of these challenges are all interconnected and therefore require coordinated action by multiple city agencies. So for example, you can't really talk about affordable housing without also talking about transportation, access to jobs, the environment. And understanding that all of these are interconnected, we see a need for a process through which there is collaboration across departments. And this is something that has surfaced in multiple interviews we've had with city experts. So just to highlight what this looks like, on the top here, I've listed the 5 priorities that were identified through the 2020 neighborhood survey. And these include equitable access to basic needs, provide living wages, housing, quality healthcare, and employment opportunities. And we found that none of these, except for the housing one, has an explicit home in the comp plan as is currently written. However, these are all things that require coordination within and outside the city. So we think that there's an opportunity here to expand the scope of the comprehensive plan to make sure that these important elements of life are all included, and making sure that in that process there is collaboration across departments happening.
Ms. Furusawa, could you please pause? We have a question from Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. Just can you explain, you stated that in the comp plan that several of these were not explicit. Can you explain that in more detail? And is that in the current comp plan, or just explain that a little bit more? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. So yes, we mean that these are things that are not that either do not have its own plan element or are not mentioned in relevant plan elements where it might be included.
Thank you. You can go ahead and continue.
Perfect, thank you. So lastly, on the third pillar about generating accountability and action, we think that this is important for a number of reasons also, but as it's written, the current plan fails to identify which city department is responsible for taking on each of the actions that are listed in the plan. And there is no measurable, with some exceptions, there is no measurable targets for what these actions should achieve. Secondly, we found that some of the plan elements do include some bold goals and actions, but what's missing here is the connection between these bold goals and the tools that the city has to implement these. So for example, back to the housing element, we found that affordability is mentioned as a key pillar in the overall goal. However, when it comes to the land development code, which is the implementing tool that the city has to to realize what's written in the comp plan, affordability is not an explicit goal here. So there are cases like this where the plan itself is bold, but it fails in its implementation of this. So we think there's an opportunity to strengthen that connection also through this current plan update. And lastly, we found that the plan as it's written is not clear enough to help the city who's using the plan to say yes to some project and no to others. And so we think there's an opportunity to clarify and make it a more useful guide for city decision making. So as an example, we're citing the recent case of Seminary Lane. And of course, we're not here to solve Seminary Lane, but what we found through research on this case is that it provides a useful example for thinking through the role that the comprehensive plan might play if it were designed to advance more equitable development within the city. So we've listed a few kind of bullets for what the plan could achieve in its update. So starting with how things might have panned out if the plan had set clear targets for preserving and providing affordable housing, or had identified which agencies were responsible for monitoring progress and tracking against those affordable housing goals. Another thing the updated plan might achieve is to help the city weigh the multiple and oftentimes competing goals that it's mandated to achieve. So in this case, that might be the need for more student housing, while also making sure that there's affordable housing for residents who are not students, while also making sure that the historic character of Black neighborhoods are preserved. And oftentimes the city is in a position to balance these multiple goals. And we think there's an opportunity here to make the plan a more useful guide for the city to weigh these multiple goals. We think the plan could also provide clear standards for what gets built or does not get built on private property, or to be a more useful guide also for public property and how decisions are made on how property is managed or disposed. And lastly, this is more of a process-related item, but what if the plan had included more specific requirements for departments to conduct community outreach earlier and more regularly, so that each department can make sure that residents' priorities are embedded in its decision-making. So we've talked through the three key pillars that we'll take forward in the plan update process. But in terms of how we will get this done and what actions we will make sure to take so that each of these pillars are embedded in the process, I've listed some here, which I'll talk through quickly. But starting again with Century and Black Gainesville, we think the first step for this is to interrogate all the existing plan elements and making sure to identify which goals and policies fall short and where there's an opportunity to reinforce racial equity in the plan. And secondly, as we develop the goals and policies for the update, making sure that the focus on historic inequities and racial disparities that exist currently are front and center in each plan element. Secondly, on the second pillar of involving the whole city organization, we think that there's an opportunity to make it truly comprehensive and touching on the many aspects of life in Gainesville that are currently missing from the current comp plan, and making sure that in that process, we're facilitating collaboration across multiple departments so that they can write this and implement this together. And lastly, on the accountability piece, making sure that we emerge with the plan having clear success metrics and targets and mechanisms for how the city can keep itself accountable to what's in the plan. Also being explicit about the connection between the plan and how it impacts Gainesvillians day to day, and how residents can also take ownership of the plan themselves to hold the city accountable to it. And lastly, on accountability and action, making sure that there's a stronger connection between what's in the plan and the tools at the city's disposal to make those happen. So on that, I'll expand a little bit and hand it back over to Lydia. But on accountability and action, we've seen multiple examples of how that might happen, but these are generally, these generally require 3 steps, starting with, first of all, measuring progress is a key step. And so defining success and making sure that also success is measured using the right metrics. And we think that getting input from the community in understanding what to track so that the city is accurately tracking progress is a key factor in this step. And secondly, making sure that what's being measured is being publicly reported so that it's both useful to the city internally, but also for people outside the city to make sure that both the city and those outside are tracking progress together. And lastly, making sure that what's being measured and reported are leading to action. So this might entail requiring each department to align their decision-making around budgets and other priorities with what's in the comprehensive plan. And potentially even including some sort of triggers so that if a threshold is met, there's city action that will happen in a timely manner. So these are some things that we're starting to develop and we'll continue to refine in the following phase to make sure that this pillar is incorporated into the plan update. So I'll hand it back over to Lydia here to talk about what's next and how we will update the plan.
Thank you, Ari. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about our approach and process for updating the plan. And in here, we'll get a little bit more into detail about community engagement and where that input will play a role. So here, we're sort of laying out a little bit about how the plan will be redesigned. In summary, the plan will be redesigned to include 8 different chapters that are organized around the major aspects of everyday life in Gainesville. So listed out here, we've got Gainesville today, where we live, how we get around, how we work, our environment, our health, education, and well-being, arts and culture, and our city government. So you can see, here, both the kind of general categorization and the kind of plain language approach that we've taken to sort of breaking down this kind of complex topics into these topic areas. And also underneath, you can see some of the detail as to what the different subtopics are included within each of these proposed chapters. So this is a little bit of our thinking in terms of the reorganization that we're doing and how we're sort of working with Andrew and our working groups to dig into these sort of sections as we've organized them here. Next slide. So, just a little bit about our sort of drafting process. We've been working with Andrew and others to set up this citywide working group effort, which will update the plan over the course of the next 6 months. So as we sort of laid it out right here, we've got 3 general phases. Phase 1 is where we evaluate the current comprehensive plan, the plan as written today, and thinking about things like how does the current plan reinforce the disparity that we see, and what goals and policies should the plan, as it's redesigned, prioritize? So this evaluation and prioritization exercise will run for about 2.5 months. Phase 2 is when we get into drafting. Now that we've done that kind of, analysis, what does it look like to sort of bring this forward into drafting what a revised plan can look like? And there we're kind of exploring, questions such as what are the commitments that we can make toward racial equity, again, within each of those specific kind of policy arenas and groupings of topics. And within each of those, how are we measuring success? What can we say is our ultimate sort of vision and goal? And how are we going to plan and put mechanisms in place to measure and track progress against those goals? In phase 3, we'll take another, 1.5 months after we've got, drafts of all of those different chapters to really just focus in on refining the plan. So does the plan go far enough to, again, sort of create racial equity in the city and address the historic and current harms that are sort of underway? And how do we keep the city accountable? How can we partner more often, more frequently, and better with community members to make sure that we're reflecting concerns and priorities as best we can? And you can see at the bottom of this slide a couple of key points in the process where we're sort of planning to come back to the commission. Here are some of the key points to provide sort of updates as to sort of where we are and to get your input as we go along. Next slide. So alongside and in parallel to our working group process, we're going to be working with the city to reach out to community members to share out this diagnosis of, what have we found is the inequity we see today, where the comprehensive plan currently falls short, and what a redesigned comprehensive plan can do to better serve their needs and reflect their priorities. At the end of this process, success will mean a couple of different things. I'll talk about briefly here. One, we'll consider this effort successful if we, throughout this process have built trust and stronger relationships between historically and presently marginalized groups and city staff. We've done some trust building to sort of reflect their concerns and reflect their input as we've drafted this new plan. In terms of the sort of second goal, we're hoping throughout this process to result in community capacity among those historically and presently marginalized groups, to build their capacity, to build their understanding of what a comprehensive plan is, what planning will do to improve their lives, and why they should care, what they might be able to do to sort of play a stronger role in the future if they choose to. In the third regard, success will look like the community actually being able to see their vision for the future, their vision for racial equity in action over time. And in the fourth regard, success will look like the city staff gaining experience using participatory planning as a tool to make decisions. What does it look like through this process and in future processes to use this kind of participatory approach to uncover what those priorities are and plan together as to how to address those concerns or sort of reach those goals that we develop together. So next slide. So in order to achieve those objectives, we're going to be hosting a variety of different types of community conversations where we can, as you see here at the top under strategy, where we can bring the planning process to communities that have been historically kind of excluded from such planning efforts and build those new relationships and build that trust between the city and the community. So the primary tactics that we'll be advancing are listed here in these sort of three pillars. One is listening sessions. This is an opportunity for us to, give a platform and voice where we can sort of understand and record the lived experiences of these communities, make sure that their priorities for what a racially equitable comprehensive plan are incorporated into our process at the beginning. The second sort of tactic is targeted interviews. We'll be conducting sort of specific outreach to institutions, community groups, that represent interests, who are going to be impacted by this updated plan in concert with our city working groups. And our third tactic is these, community-led discussions. We want to make sure to open up the opportunity for input to everyone in the city. And, we've used to a lot of success in other instances, this idea of a meeting in a box that allows for stakeholder groups to host their independent discussions and conversations about what they'd like to see. They know, the types of feedback and input that we're looking for, and they're able to bring together their own community to develop their thoughts, their priorities, and submit their input for us to incorporate into the planning process. So next slide. So in addition to the different types of community conversations that we'll be advancing, we'll be using digital media in order to, on the one hand, provide transparency into the planning process, and also, open a platform for everyone to learn about what the comprehensive plan is and does, and to give everyone, again, yet another opportunity to provide input into this work. So that will look like a couple of different things. One is a dedicated project website that will, provide an overview of what this redesigned comprehensive plan, will start to look like, what is the process that we'll be moving through to update the plan. And it'll also share out for, transparency and as updates throughout our process, different project documents and media, including educational and promotional videos, either sort of explaining in a more kind of engaging way what the comprehensive plan, is about, what are the topics that we're exploring, or as sort of video recordings that are kind of educational or sort of reflect the community conversation that we just had for others who weren't able to join live. So in addition to the website, just to go back a little bit, we're also going to be working with the communications department on social media and email to make sure that we're using every avenue that we've got to make sure that we're promoting the events and spreading the word about this project. We're using every avenue that we've got to share out, either educational or promotional videos or the content of the video sessions that some people, again, might not be able to join live, and providing yet another opportunity for people to provide public comment. And in the third regard, we're working right now on an introductory explainer type video that really just brings some of the things that we're talking to you all today about what a comprehensive plan is, why it matters to everyday life, and where a redesigned comprehensive plan will address inequity, just to kind of bring that concept into a very graphical, approachable, accessible format for shareability online and on social media. Next slide. And one other major effort that will move forward in parallel to our working group process is this fellowship program, which we're really excited about. The idea here is to invest in a small but representative group of residents who would join the process as fellows, and through this process of participating with our planning teams, they would be building capacity and knowledge, understanding of city planning, how it works, why they should care, how they can be involved, and where their influence and input can make a difference. And in addition to the benefits to them and to our process of bringing their perspectives in, this also is an opportunity for us to pilot a new model of participatory planning, of bringing some residents and participants from different walks of life directly into the planning process and really giving them a seat at the table, allowing us to sort of better uplift and represent their kind of lived experience, and also to bring them together with city staff to, again, sort of think about the ways that we can all be doing better to engage community, to be explaining things in plain language, and really testing that live as we go through this process. So, this sort of program is described in a little bit more in detail, but we're excited to kind of embed this fellow sort of program within our work so that we're not only kind of going into a back room and thinking within the city and in our working groups about what a redesigned plan can look like, but we're building capacity and representing lived experience, providing a seat at the table all throughout. The next slide. So just in terms, I'll speak a little bit here about how community voices, where resident input will directly shape what the plan update looks like. So here you'll see a little bit of the phases that we talked about before. Phase 1 being this kind of evaluation part of our process, phase 2 being the kind of active drafting, and phase 3 being the refinements of the proposed plan. And underneath that are some of the bullets that represent the different engagement tactics that we just talked about. So, for instance, community listening sessions will be conducted at the top of our process, and that will have a tie directly into our evaluation and exercise. Where are we reflecting the priorities that came out through some of those listening sessions? Where are we falling short? Each of these engagement sort of tactics, we've done a little bit of thinking and are continuing to work with our sort of team at the city side to make sure that everything that we're doing to reach out to community members has a home and has a purpose in terms of it having a direct input into how our plan comes to life and takes shape. The next slide. So just to extend this a little bit further, where would there are a couple of areas where the commissioner's sort of input and support will be very helpful throughout this process. So on the one hand, your support is critical to the implementation of a successful community engagement effort. So our activities will be spaced throughout the process, as you can see on this timeline. And really, there are 3 different types of activities that you all could support and that would be sort of most helpful. One is in terms of reach and extending the reach and sort of visibility of this process across the city. And your support would be, very helpful in terms of promoting the media that we're putting out, promoting the events, emphasizing why this plan matters and why people should care and take an active role in shaping this process and the plan as it takes shape. 2 is in terms of presence. There's an opportunity for you all to participate in the community events and for you to have a role in sort of representing your perspective or representing the city as those communications and conversations move forward. And 3 is to lend your voice, to contribute over digital media, social media, emails that we'll be sending out. If you have anything that you'd want to say about the comprehensive plan, about your thoughts about different topics, there's definitely an opportunity for you all in the commission to contribute your voice into the conversation itself. And next slide.
Thank you, Ms. Gabby. Could you please pause for a moment? We have a question from Commissioner Simmons.
Yes.
You can wait. Okay, go ahead. We'll get back to it in a sec. Go ahead, Miss Gabby.
Oh, okay. So the second sort of area of support will be, in terms of the plan as it takes shape over time, your guidance and input and feedback will be really critical. So here we've called out a couple of key points in our drafting process that will, we'll take, explicit steps to come back to you all with, draft language, draft elements of the plan, and we can kind of talk through in detail how this is all taking shape over time. So 3 areas that we've, highlighted here in red at the bottom are that, one of the big opportunities for your all input is on the draft goals and the policy priorities. Another is on the draft policies and success metrics, accountability measures are the things that we're actually designing to be included in this plan, sort of reaching as far as they could. Are they, are we setting ourselves up for success, and, where can we do more? And then at the sort of final sort of instance is drafting the actual plan, or reviewing the draft plan, and also the sort of rollout strategy. Really, like, where does this go next, and how can we sort of take this draft plan forward? Next slide. So with that, really happy to sort of, join you all here today to talk to you a little bit about the thinking we put into this. And we'd like to turn it over to, Andrew and the commission for question and answers. Happy to flip back to any of our slides and talk in more detail.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Gabby, Ms. Furusawa. I very much appreciate the thorough update. And I'm personally very excited about where we are and where we're headed. So let me go back to Commissioner Simmons, and then I'll get Commissioner Johnson next.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to also echo what Mayor just stated. I think this is a very thorough, very detailed plan. I'm very excited about it, and I'm just really like the part when you put in the fellowship program. I think that is just so important, and I just want to just let you all know, I think you've done a wonderful job up to this point. I'm excited to be a part of this. Can be very transformative. So this is great. Mayor, I'm very impressed.
Great to hear it. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I also thank you to staff and HRNA and anyone else that is helping on this project. I'm also really excited about it. It's very thoughtful, really well planned. I do have a few questions that I'd like to go through. Can we go back to the public schools element slide? I think it was right after that. Yeah. So I'm wondering how you all are going to approach this. And the reason why I'm asking is in terms of timing. We have a discussion coming up with the school board and the county, and I'm wondering if there's any input from that meeting that would be helpful as you all work on this element of the comp plan.
Andrew, I'll allow you to speak up here if you've got any specific feedback. I think there are probably, that's one instance, but there are probably multiple instances with, public schools, but also other topics where we'll definitely take whatever steps we can to make sure that we're connecting all of these conversations into one and learning from what's shared elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just to echo what Lydia said, I think that's any sort of discussions that the commission and the school board are going to be having is definitely going to inform the work that we're going to do with the public schools element part of the plan. I also want to mention that in addition to the public schools element, we also have interlocal agreement between the city and the school board, which is intended to implement some of the policies that we have in the element. So I could see, we work through with the commission and the school board and HRNA with the comp plan, and then we follow up any changes with an interlocal agreement to implement some of those policies.
Okay, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we do have a meeting, And I don't know exactly, I mean, it seems like it would make sense to have this as an agenda item, but I don't know if we're going to be far enough along in the process to be able to have a discussion about policies around this public schools element. Does that make sense, Andrew? So, I know this meeting is planned for late spring. Do you think that there would be any that it would be helpful to have this as an item? To be determined. How about
Yeah,
that?
I think we can definitely participate in the joint meeting, and I think we'll have in sort of the late spring time, like we'll be well into our working groups at the city, and I think we'll probably at least have a fairly rough idea of where we're going with this element. So I think we should hopefully be able to bring some information to the table and hopefully listen to the discussion between the commission and the board at the time.
Okay, and the county is going to be there also.
Right.
So I can't really see you all right now, but Mayor, I would just ask that we reserve some space for this item on the agenda.
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks. So there was another slide about the working group. Can you tell me who is on that working group and how people were chosen, and what I have an idea of what you all are doing, but who's in the group?
So the groups are primarily all internal city stakeholders, director level for the most part. And we've reached out. I think what's a little bit different about this plan and the work that we're doing is we actually have reached out across all the charters. And so we have representation from all of the charters. And I think that's sort of in keeping with one of the pillars that we talked about making this an organization-wide plan, not just, sort of, strictly, checking the box type of comp plan that we've had in the past. So we have, director level, decision level staff on all of those working groups that represent those 8 chapters of the comp plan.
Oh, I see. There's several working groups. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. There's several working groups. So basically each chapter is going to have those staff working through facilitated sessions about identifying like where the current plan falls short and opportunities for where we can bake equity into every part of it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, there's a slide about the listening sessions, and has there been any thought given to incentivizing people to participate in the listening sessions?
Yeah, we actually were just discussing that in our meeting earlier this week about are there some creative ways that we can, in addition to providing monetary compensation, similar to sort of what we're doing for the fellowship, are there ways that the city can provide in other incentives like pool passes or other types of things that we have, at our disposal to encourage people to, and I think we're the sort of, the sky is sort of wide open. So from a commission, perspective, if there are any ideas that you have, we would definitely like to hear them, because we recognize that it's that we're asking people for their valuable input, and when there's a compensation for their time that we want to provide them.
Thank you, Andrew. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. I mean, I don't have any ideas right now, but I'm glad that you're at least thinking about how to incentivize people to be a part of listening sessions, because I think where we've fallen short in the past is that it's been pretty kind of volunteer, and we understand that the kinds of folks that are able to have the time and energy and resources to volunteer their time, and we want to get to a different set of people. So I'm really thrilled to hear that you all are thinking about this a little bit differently. Can you tell me about the Imagine Fellows, how you have been recruiting them and when they're going to be on board, and tell me a little bit more about that program.
I'd like to, if it's okay, I believe Ann Wolf is on the call, and I probably would want to get her input.
Okay.
On this.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. And so the way that we're going about that is we're going to be working with local nonprofit organizations. We are creating a bid and there's a quick turnaround time. So our hope is to begin this in February, and we're going to be reaching out to several nonprofits. Would love feedback if you have anyone on the commission has a specific nonprofit that you would like to be aware that there is this bid. We're going to ask for support in finding the fellows and also technical support. So for example, Community Spring or the Rural Women's Health Project, both are potential options for people that we can reach out to who have the capacity and the experience working with groups of community members to support them through a sort of consensus-based process such as this one. So that's the primary method that we're using to hire people. Perhaps in the future, we might hire them directly, but for now, we need the support of our local nonprofit organizations.
Fantastic. And that is, so you said that you hope to hire people by the beginning of February, is that right?
We're working with procurement to move as quickly as we can in that process. Yep.
Thank you. As soon as you have that information, I'd love it if you can send it to the commission so that we can also just let folks know, like you said, if there's anybody.
Of course.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
And just
So,
to add, oh, sorry.
Sure, Andrew.
No, just to add, I think, and this is very much sort of in this spirit of one of the goals of this plan update is to focus on capacity building. So we're going to be structuring the bid to potentially award multiple nonprofits with the fellowship. So, ideally, we're going to help increase capacity on both sides, on the city side, because this is something that we've talked about, on the staff and commission level, but so far we haven't, sort of had an opportunity to really do, an implementation and figure out what works, what doesn't work. So it's a little bit of an experiment on the city side too. But I think it's a real great opportunity, and I think it's a way for to look at the comp plan not as just a update that we're doing, but a way to increase capacity in the community and on the city side as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. I absolutely love the way that you all are thinking about this, and the way that you have been really thoughtful and methodical about this process. So I'm incredibly excited to, one, be a part of it, and to two, be on the commission as we go through this. So thank you for all of your work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of going off of Commissioner Johnson, I agree. I think this is a great plan. I think it's a good engagement strategy that's moving forward, and how we're engaging the public. So kind of trying to get a better understanding of kind of when the commission or myself or commissioners kind of giving feedback and checking in. So my understanding, kind of looking at that slide, is it like March? Is that kind of when those draft goals and policy priorities come back, and that's kind of when we'll be doing a check-in with the commission to see if kind of those align with the goals of the commission? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the way that we've set up the process so far, that would be the point where we set up another touch point with you all at the commission to provide an update and give you all a chance to just take a look at where we are and provide some feedback about general direction, or as specific as, in terms of specific policies and where those are headed.
Okay. And then as chapters of the comp plan are drafted, how do you visualize or plan to have those come before the commission for review? Are they going to come back as individual chapters, or all 8 at one time? Or how do you plan to kind of getting feedback on the individual kind of as we start to develop the actual language?
I think we haven't quite figured that part out, honestly, like in terms of whether we bring individual chapters to you as they are, to a drafted state, or bring the entire plan. I would say if we bring individual chapters forward, that's an approach, but I think, as you've heard, this plan is intended to be very much interwoven and less sort of how it's currently drafted as, discrete elements that don't do a really great job of talking to each other. So, I guess we'd be interested in hearing commission feedback on that, but I I would just caution, rather than take individual chapters forward, there may be some loss of translation in between the whole.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair point of kind of how hopefully it's the interwoven the plan will be. I guess as we kind of go through those points, I do want to, I mean, reading or getting it all in one chunk, I don't know the best way to do it, but how to be able to give kind of specific feedback and not, I mean, I don't know, spreading it out over a week or something like that and having multiple meetings in a period of time, so it's kind of is broken up so we can kind of have real thought behind it and not just feel rushed and just have it all crammed into one day. But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job on what we have thus far. Help me understand a little better how we're including, how we're going to make sure that we include GRU resources as part of this as well, but primarily staff, but also UAB and that sort of thing, because we have a bad habit, and it's a natural and understandable habit, but we have a bad habit of doing general government and GRU, and it's all the city of Gainesville, and we, in my opinion, we must be more inclusive of, we must more intentionally include GRU in all these discussions in the comp plan. There is nothing about, we can't have an effective comp plan that is focused exclusively on general government, or even, mostly on general government. It's got to be hand in hand as we go through this. So help me understand a little better how we intend to do that.
100% agree. We actually, Ed and I were talking the other day, and traditionally, right, our GRU involvement on the comp plan is primarily just on the water wastewater side, and traditionally that's only been related to sort of statutory requirements for, do you have enough water and wastewater capacity to handle, your projected development, based on your future land use element. And obviously, like, that approach is not not where we're going with this comp plan. So we actually will have multiple members of GRU leadership on the working groups through this that span new areas of the comprehensive plan that we don't have today. So looking at sustainability, looking at energy, looking at fiber optic facilities, as well as equity and water wastewater, the sort of more traditional water wastewater component. But 100% we agree, this is not a general government plan or a Department of Sustainable Development plan. It's an organizational plan, which absolutely includes GRU. And I think what's a little bit different in this plan is we actually have we'll have input from the auditor's office, from the clerk's office. So we'll have actual sort of tie-in to across the charters, which is I think a new approach for this plan.
Very good. I like that. I would point out also, or remind all of us, that we have an existing commitment to 100% renewable energy, and by 2045, and that needs to be front and center in this plan. It needs to be not hard to find as we go through this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
And Andrew, on those line of questioning regarding GRU, what about GRUCOM?
Yes, GRUCOM absolutely will be included. I think it has a lot of tie-in with the focus on equity, on digital divide. So that'll be a major component of involvement with GRU.
Okay, and what's the time frame to have this completed, the land development code? Are we required by law to have this done by a certain time?
Mr. Mayor, no. If you recall, the city last year, I believe, or maybe it's 2019. Last year is sort of a blur. But we actually informed the state that we were going to do basically our own comprehensive plan update, and we were not going to use the state facilitated process, which does have a strict timeline on it. So that we knew that this was going to be a completely different process, completely different plan than anything we've done before. So we didn't want to have this sort of artificial time constraint on it.
Right, so we don't have a time limit.
No.
Okay, we're not, okay. I have some of the same concerns as Commissioner Santos regarding, are we going to get one chapter or one topic at one particular time versus getting everything all at once? I would personally like to be kept abreast on various things as it goes out throughout the process. So will you all be doing the commissioner rounds and just updating us every so often on where we are and giving us an opportunity to give you guys feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely do individual commissioner meetings. I also wanted to mention on the website, we're also going to be posting all the drafts of the plan as we go. We've been talking about providing those drafts in using translation services, so there are multiple options for people to be able to read through the website and any drafts that we put on. So in addition to being hosted, we will also make sure that we have touch points with the commission as we go.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you all for the detailed presentation. I'm in agreement with my colleagues. This is a roadmap that I can support. Very much pleased with the sort of segmentation of the work, particularly how you're going to be really putting a focus on each phase for what I think is a decent period of time. I don't think 2.5 months is too long or too short. I think that's about right. And some of these are a little shorter than that. One thing I did want to add input for when I look at the, well, I have a question about, so looking at the Imagine Gainesville 8 chapters, so to speak, and how they're broken into different aspects of life. The city government is included, public school facilities are included. I think these are obviously two of the major key components. But I think it's worth mentioning the University of Florida, and they have their own master plan that is going forward. And as our strategic partners, we really need to make sure that their vision is taken into account and vice versa. And so if you all could speak a little bit to how you intend to incorporate UF's visions and so forth.
Go ahead, Lydia. Sorry.
I'll just say quickly that it's a really great comment, and it's something that we've been thinking about sort of throughout this process. And there's this working group process. There's also some outreach that we're planning to do in parallel to this process, just to kind of align and make sure that the way that we're thinking about the future sort of is connected to the way that they're going through their strategic planning process. So we're open to exactly how that unfolds, but it'll come up a couple of different times throughout our process that we're making sure to connect with the University of Florida to just sort of talk and verbalize, share where we're going and what we're thinking so far. How does that sort of have an implication on their side for how they sort of think about planning for the future? And just to kind of keep those lines of communication open. And for anything specific that comes up that requires more coordination, that's something we can kind of plan and address as we go along. Andrew, anything else that you want to add about their participation in the work as we go forward?
No, that was what I was going to say, and I just include Santa Fe in that as well.
Thank you. And I think that's a key component. It's funny when Commissioner Ward mentioned the 2045. When we mentioned 2045, it always seems so far away, but now it's 2020, and it'll be 2045 before we know it. So it'll be the end of this process before we know it. And this will be a 10-year comprehensive plan. The University of Florida's campus master plan is updated every 5 years, but they've also got a 2040 vision that is essentially a reorientation of the center of their campus to include a huge chunk of Midtown and downtown Gainesville, where a lot of these historically black neighborhoods are. So in my view, their reception to our comprehensive plan and their involvement and really, in my view, cooperation and acquiescence to what we're trying to do is going to be a huge component in the long-term success and outcomes of the work that we're doing this year. So I know that's a lot to look into the future, but thank you for your answers. I appreciate, really, this is fantastic. You all should be very proud of yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Feldman, do you or can you get anybody on that knows where we are in the process of choosing a firm to do our inclusionary, exclusionary work?
Yes, I can, and Andrew's here too, but the short answer is we are opening up those proposals today.
Okay.
And then they will go through the evaluation process and present to the commission. We're hoping at one of your February meetings.
Okay. Not to state the obvious, but it's so important that whomever is chosen to do that work.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could just interrupt. So one of the potential parties is on the on this call today. Right. So I would just ask that we refrain from talking about.
Okay. So I'm not going to talk about the RFP or any of that, but with the established criteria and goals of this, I don't see how it is possible to effectively develop the draft plan without that work and that information. So whomever does it needs to be integrated into this process as soon as they come on board. There's going to have to be a very quick onboarding process. So it's all happening, at the same time. And that's my only concern. So anyway, I know why we don't have somebody picked yet, and that's really, I think, a flaw in our own internal policies, which can be corrected, and it's something that we need to look at. But this is too important to have something like that create a gap in the data we have, that we're then going to base long-term decisions on. The other request I have, Madam Clerk, first of all, if you would help me just make note of Commissioner Johnson's request of that item on the three-way meeting to make sure that we remember that when I meet with the two chairs and set the agenda for that. The second is, I think it would be helpful to schedule or just put a couple holds on our calendar for some special meetings this spring. So, because I really want to address the drafts on their own. I don't want to put these on a GPC meeting or a regular city commission meeting. I want them to be their own thing. I think that helps us with getting our community focused on it, and we can really ramp up, a sort of media outreach. Just say, hey, on this day, we're going to be bringing all these things that you've been helping us on back, and you're going to get to see what the sort of early, final version might look like. So anyway, Madam Clerk, if you can look ahead. I mean, I was looking for fifth Thursdays, and 2021 is scamped on those. So there's only 2 fifth Thursdays between now and July, one in April and one in July, I think. So that's not going to be our magic bullet. But just looking at other dates, I know that the further out, the earlier we can do this and the further out we go, the more likely we're going to be able to get everybody's calendar synced. So let's put a few holds on, and then once the work starts getting closer to that point, we can figure out which dates will work best. So I think that's all I had. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Adam to see if anybody out there in the great beyond wishes to make any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have one individual in the great beyond, Mr. Nathan Scott. Mr. Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Nathan Scott. Thank you, Adam, and I appreciate that. I like your tone when you remind me I have 3 minutes. Anyway, I want to start first by commending staff, Andrew, and staff for the presentation. Thought it was informative. My comments are directed towards the City Commission because you guys take the direction from them. So it has no reflection on staff. That being said, I'm extremely disappointed that the mayor and the Gainesville City Commission are using taxpayer money to provide paid monetary compensation for fellowships and people attending listening sessions for the comprehensive plan. It appears that you're going to use our taxpayer money to hire community and neighborhood organizers. You know, this is tantamount to what a UAB member said during one of the UAB member meetings, Carla Miles. So it seems very suspect that, you know, it's almost like you're rewarding your buddies with taxpayer money so they bring you the votes when you need them. I don't think that's appropriate. I think there's many volunteers in their community, including myself, that volunteer their time. Doris Edwards is another great example. Works hard for their neighborhood, their community at large, and doesn't request compensation. So my question to you, Mayor Poe, is how are you going to fund this additional expansion of government? We just talked about there's a potential bidder for RFP for a consulting project on the phone, which seems to represent a conflict of interest in itself, as Mr. Feldman, the city manager, told you you really can't discuss it. So one has to wonder whether he's bringing in one of his other buddies. But, you know, this seems to reek of corruption, commissioners. It's not that it's not well intended. It's that you guys keep hiring consultants at every single city commission meeting. You keep spending more money at every city commission meeting, whether it be a policy committee or a regular city commission meeting. It doesn't matter. Every time you talk about consultants, hiring another one, bringing on another consultant, hiring fellowships, hiring community and neighborhood organizers. Mayor Poe, how are you going to fund that expansion of city government, noting the financial problems facing the city, the financial problems facing GRU and its customers that have to pay for our excessive electric bills? I'd like to know. That's a valid point, valid question that hasn't been discussed. Because the only option is for you to continue to raise our property taxes and GRU bills. And on the topic of GRU participating in the comprehensive plan, you know, this city commission would spend its time addressing GRU issues. They would understand that the winter wastewater max is set in your January and February bills.
That's time, sir.
Okay, I'll address my comments later, and I'd add that they need to have a public comment session
Anybody
during
else,
this meeting
Adam,
at
on
your
the line?
committee meetings like they used to have. Y'all need to bring that back. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe that is the last caller, Mr. Mayor. No one else in the great beyond. The floor is
All right,
yours.
thank you. So I can, I think, pretty quickly answer the questions. First of all, I want to point out and correct the caller that this past year, we did not raise GRU rates. We did not raise the millage rate. As far as how we pay for this was part of our approved budget. And every year we pass a balanced budget. So there is no fiscal crisis or emergency, and this is completely within the scope of the work that we had planned to do that we are now executing. So everything is as it should be. Commissioner Hayes Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As for the special meetings, I think we should try to get them to align with the dates that we have that they kind of outlined.
Well, right. That's so.
Oh,
That's
okay.
I want the clerk to be able to sort of pick a few in those ranges.
Okay.
And then, I mean, I don't think these are hard and fast dates that they showed us. It's going to kind of depend on the work, and so when they know that they're ready to bring a product forward, then we have some dates set aside. That was all. Okay. Well, thank you all very much, especially Ms. Furusawa and Ms. Gabby. Appreciate your spending the time, and we'll get to know each other quite well, I think, over the next several months, and I'm looking forward to that. Andrew, thank you to you and your staff as well for all the work that you've been doing with our consultants behind the scenes. And I just want to put a punctuation mark on how unique and innovative this approach and process is. I'm just thrilled already as to what the outcome will be. It's not that we necessarily have done anything wrong or inappropriate in the past, but it's just that our lens has changed, and I have a feeling that whatever comes out of this will be used as a sort of model for many other communities that are trying to do this work as well. So there's a little bit of added weight on our work because of that, but wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you all. Appreciate it. We will move on to our next item on our agenda and bid you all a fond farewell. And so our next item on the agenda is the Disadvantaged Workers Ordinance. I don't know, Ms. Shalley, if you had an update for us, or we just wanted to turn it over. I know Commissioner Ward, you asked for this to be placed on the agenda, so I don't know if you had any introductory comments. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping we'd have this on a regular meeting agenda, because I feel like we've talked it to death, and as far as I know, we're in agreement on it, unless there are things that come up today that need to be fixed. We had it on a regular meeting agenda toward the end of the year that was just a little too heavy. I thought that's why I asked to move it, but I was hoping that it would be on a regular meeting agenda, both of these two items. So
Okay.
I don't really know where to go from here on that.
Okay. Yeah, there was the drafts are in the backup, and they had the additions or changes highlighted. So I think if there's any questions about any of those or any suggestions about any further modifications, we could give that direction today, and otherwise ask that these be placed for first reading on an upcoming agenda. Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say I don't have any comments. Looking through the draft ordinance, the changes look pretty clear cut, and I would be prepared to move this to a vote on first reading.
Okay, there's a motion to put this on a regular city commission agenda for first reading. The second was by, I believe, Commissioner Ward. Okay, motion by Ariola, seconded by Ward. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm ready for this to be moved, so we can.
We're ready to move on. Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ariola. I'm sorry, hey, Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the threshold where these requirements are put into place? I was trying to. Is that on just major construction projects? Is that correct?
I don't know, Mr. Feldman, are you here to help with that?
I am. So if you go to line 29, the definition of a, sorry, maybe on the wrong ordinance, but it's the same for both. If construction project is one that is defined as $300,000 for construction or $75,000 for electrical contracts. And we took those thresholds right from the state statutes, which trigger whether a contract has to be publicly bid or not.
Okay, and so at that point, that's when these would go into effect, these ordinances?
That's my understanding, yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, seeing no further lights, we'll go ahead and move to public comment. Adam?
Yes, sir. We have one commenter, Mr. Nathan Scott. Mr. Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adam. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Nathan Scott. Since this has been moved to the City Commission meeting for first reading, I'll speak to that there. Again, this is something that's well intended, but if you read the narrative in the agenda item, it seems like the City Commission is stretching to develop a public purpose. Again, I think the trades are very important, but I think that the City Commission is stretching substantially by just the plain reading of the language in the agenda item to come up with this public necessity or public need or the city's need to have this workforce work on capital projects. I mean, there's free market economy. That's why you have an RFP process. People bid. I mean, it's not like you're not going to have qualified people that can handle your capital projects. Matter of fact, Perry Roofing is resurfacing the roof at City Hall. I mean, obviously those are qualified tradespersons. Again, you know, it's well intended, commissioners, but it's adding a bunch of additional expense, and it's not core function of government. And that's my concern. And I think that, you know, it's my concern has been, politics aside, it has nothing to do with politics. I want fiscally accountable and good city governance, and that's what I stand for. That's why I take my time to participate in these meetings, try and hold our elected officials accountable that are not fiscally responsible. And Mayor Poe, contrary to your comment, because you guys always like to spin the truth, Commissioner Ward's equally guilty on that, of my comments and distort them. The city did increase tax revenue by 5.5% last year because it did not, like the county, adopt the rollback rate for property taxes. You guys are getting additional tax revenue to, you know, support your insatiable spending addiction with taxpayer money. If you'd been fiscally responsible like the county, you would have adopted the rollback rate and saved your constituents money. But you don't do that. You just like to distort the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Mayor, we have no other speakers. The floor is yours.
Okay, let's move to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Johnson,
You were on mute,
Commissioner
Mr. Johnson.
I think we're on mute.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
Aye.
Commissioner Sacco is absent. Commissioner Ward,
Aye.
Commissioner Ariolo,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayes Santos,
Aye.
and Mayor Poe.
Aye, that motion passes unanimously with Sacco absent, so this will be on our, well, we can put this on our next city commission agenda. We have agenda review tomorrow, so, Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and include that for the, meeting on the 21st. Okay, next item is the apprenticeship ordinance.
Excuse me, Mayor Poe?
Yes.
Sorry, I had raised my hand.
Oh, sorry, yep.
Yes, so you all have requested first reading of an ordinance, and my office will need to prepare the ordinances. The ordinances in the backup were prepared by procurement staff, my understanding, based on St. Pete's models. So in order for us to have time to advertise for first reading and prepare it in the city's form, the soonest it could be on would be February 18th for first reading.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks for the clarification. So Madam Clerk, we'll just, as soon as the attorney's office is ready and we've done the notice, let's go ahead and get it on a meeting agenda. Next item is the apprenticeship ordinance. I think it's similar circumstances, and so unless there's any questions, if anybody wants to make a motion to do the same, that would be fine. All right, Commissioner Ward moves that we put this on a regular city commission meeting for first reading, have the attorney's office draft the ordinance for first reading. Is there a second? Seconded by Simmons. The motion was by Ward. Madam Clerk, we'll go to members of the public that wish to comment on the motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one speaker, Mr. Nathan Scott. Mr. Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adam. Again, good afternoon, commissioners. Nathan Scott. So again, I support the trades, support the apprenticeship program. Great program, provide skilled labor for many jobs. But I don't believe that it's the role of the city commission to, immerse itself into what it's trying to propose here. Again, the justification for this one is even a little bit more far-fetched than the last item that I spoke on. So again, you guys are going to do what you're going to do because you're not fiscally responsible with taxpayer money. You don't adopt the rollback rate, and you keep spending money that you don't have at every single city commission meeting, hiring consultants and expanding city government by leaps and bounds. And you wonder why some of the bigger cities that you guys want to emulate Portland, Seattle, LA have all the problems they have because fiscally irresponsible spending. So again, I support the trades, support the apprenticeship program. I've worked with unions, I've worked in the union. So again, those programs are very good and they develop skilled labor, but it's not the role of the city commission to sit there and have carve outs and subsidize things, you know, that exist on their own and thrive on their own, you know, without city support until now. If it was such a problem, you know, how did we get by all these decades with skilled labor and apprentices? That's because you have the apprenticeship program. You know, they built nuclear submarines with me. So they built airplanes with me at Boeing. So again, I don't think it's the city's role to immerse itself into this, but you guys seem to focus on everything except our crumbling roads and sidewalks and public safety. You want to, you know, play all the extracurriculars while you're failing out of school. And I do appreciate Commissioner Simmons asking all the tough questions that the city commission rather not be aired publicly with respect to internal financial controls at the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. That is our last commenter. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Back to Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note for everyone, including the caller, that if there's a crumbling road or sidewalk that you have specific concerns about, you should absolutely either contact our Public Works Department or go to the My GNV app and report it. Our Public Works Department is excellent at following up on specific road issues that are on city roads, and I would appreciate if you have something specific in mind that you follow up and let us know where the problem is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, the motion is to advance this to the attorney's office to draft the ordinance for first reading and bring it back to a regular city commission meeting once that has taken place. Madam Clerk, will move to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Ward? Aye. Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Ariola?
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayes Santos?
Aye.
Commissioner Sacco is absent. Mayor Poe?
Aye, that motion passes unanimously with Sacco absent. Okay, next up we have an update on Wild Spaces Public Places. Mr. Feldman.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor, City Commissioners. I really appreciate the opportunity today to speak with you and give you a broad update on all things wild spaces. So let me start screen sharing here. Okay, and if everyone can. Okay, all right, so I think I'm up. So just before we dive into some of our project updates and future projects, I just wanted to touch on some of our history. So if you remember back in 2009 and 10, that was the first iteration of Wild Spaces, the 2 long year half-cent sales tax collection. And that really set us up for success for this 8-year sales tax initiative. Wild Spaces last went to the General Policy Committee for an update back in March, just on the cusp of COVID. So the Wild Spaces approach, so part of our framework is this pyramid of needs, and we're focused on constructing an innovative, inclusive, and resilient community for all neighbors. To put the Wild Spaces program's work in context, the city of Gainesville has approximately 100 parks and facilities, and we're about halfway through the half-cent sales tax, the 8-year sales tax program, and to date, we have spent Wild Spaces funds across 46 parks and facilities. So we're about halfway through, and we're about halfway into at least touching a number of our parks and facilities. And again, this half-cent sales tax began in January of 2017. So this slide has been shown at previous General Policy Committee meetings and City Commission meetings. And it's just a pictorial representation of some of the steps that take place in order to bring a project from project concept to completion. And today's conversation is going to focus mostly on the first kind of step in the process, where we discuss the initial project approval. Okay. And today's agenda, so I'm going to take just a few minutes of your time today and provide you with some Wild Spaces project updates on projects that have completed since our last meeting. And then we'll dive into an update on revenue and expenditures and kind of discuss the impacts that COVID has had. And then we'll get into the bulk of today's conversation, which is planning for the future. Okay. So here's our list of project updates. So not all inclusive, but these are some of our larger projects that have completed since March. So at Albert Ray Massey Park, if you visited there recently, you're going to notice there's there are new ramps leading to the baseball scorers platform. And there's also an overlook deck off of baseball field #1, which is really nice. So a lot of the project involved redoing the drainage and completely redoing baseball fields 1 and 2. So there's brand new, drainage components of the project is going to help make the fields a lot more playable after a heavy rain event. And there's brand new performance turf as well. And part of the Albert Ray Massey Park project was safety focused. And so you'll notice there's a new entrance off of Northwest 34th Street that really just improves safety. We also increased the parking capacity because we heard that that was a major need at Albert Ray Massey Park, our busiest park. So there's 40 more parking spaces, and we also have more accessible spaces and ramps. Depot Park over the summer received a large electrical improvement upgrade. So we now have a lit path from the main Depot Park parking lot to kind of the auxiliary parking lot, the old RTS lot that's used for weekends and events. A large portion of that electrical upgrade project was increasing the overall electrical capacity of the park. And so we added receptacles to existing light poles, and we retrofitted existing light poles with outlets, and also we added a whole slew of additional receptacles in the overlook areas and the open lawn to better accommodate future programming and events. So the Hippodrome also received a number of really nice upgrades this past summer. So there's now new lighting, doors, signage, there's new paint, flooring, countertops, and so much more. You see the new cinema sign and the sign on the second floor, as well as the new lighting here. If you'd like to take a tour, you're welcome to click on this hyperlink after this meeting. And the Hippodrome staff really walk you through the building. It's a very lovely space. And this is a view of the downstairs, the gallery area. I'm sure some of us will miss the wall carpeting, but it has a lot more modern feel now, while still respecting the history of the building. If you would care to venture out to Morningside Nature Center, there are 3 new pahas that were reconstructed. So those are a lot of fun, and the craftsmanship is very nice. Our new nature center at Hogton Creek Headwaters Nature Park. So that project completed this past fall. So this is pre-renovation, about 2008. And this is the architect's rendering of the future building. And this is the real deal. So this, the project, the reconstruction of the building completed this past fall. And staff are currently working on hiring 2 employees to facilitate programming in the building. And this is the future interpretive gallery. And so PRCA staff is also working with a design team to design the interpretive displays that will be, be in this portion of the building. Northside Park, we're really excited for this project to complete this past fall. There are so many wonderful activities at Northside Park now. So there's a brand new terrace off of the Senior Recreation Center. You have table games. So there's also table tennis. There's bocce ball and petanque. Public art is going to be coming later this month with a mural artist from South Florida coming up to this area. We have 2 brand new racquetball courts. There's pickleball, which is very, very popular. Tennis as well, quite busy. The modern playground is quite nice. and there's exercise equipment on the outer areas. And disc golf received a couple of modifications as well during this project, as well as the parking lot expansion. We're very excited about all the new amenities at Northside Park. And this is the petanque courts with bocce nearby. And some very nice accessible play equipment. So at Oakview Park, that project also completed this past fall. Formerly Kiwanis Girl Scout Park, but the park was renamed and signage is actually being installed in the next week or so. So this is a view of the building before renovation, constructed in 1955 by the Kiwanis Club of Gainesville. And this is a view of the lovely renovated space. Aces in Motion is in the process of moving in and getting set up, and they're excited to be starting some really nice youth programming in just a few weeks. So excited for that to kick off. And if you have not walked through the park yet, a lot of very nice landscaping, Florida-friendly plants, and there's also a nice walking loop. So you can now walk across Rattlesnake Creek on this nice bridge.
Miss Waite, who is the artist that did the two-sided, I don't know, large installation that's out front on 8th Avenue?
Ooh, I'm gonna see if Steve knows. I know Russell Etling was coordinating with that artist.
It's just awesome. It was awesome. I drive by there, you know, to and from City Hall from home, and so I got to see it being done, and it's such a meaningful and appropriate installation. So whoever it is, please pass along my compliments and thanks for doing that.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could just jump in, that was part of the program that emanated from this summer in response to the social injustice that occurred around Mr. Floyd.
Right. Yeah, and it's evocative and it makes me proud every time I drive by it. So if we can, please just pass along thanks to the artist.
Thank you. I will coordinate with Russell Etling and I'll make sure he passes on the word. But yeah, it's nice and adds a lot of just additional interest to the park, which is always appreciated. Yeah. Spring Tree Park is one of our hidden gems. And so that neighborhood nature park received a new playground. There's now an overlook deck and pavilion, and also some really beautiful signage. So it just makes it a lot easier for people to be aware of that park as they're driving by on Northwest 39th Avenue. So here's the pavilion and the overlook deck looking Three Lakes Creek. And we also have some renovated tennis courts at TV McPherson Park. So I think these courts might be the nicest courts in town right now. So if you have not been out to TB to play tennis, these courts are beautiful. So highly encourage you to check them out. At Wilhelmina Johnson Resource Center, or Charmy Park, there's now a new pavilion, which is getting a lot of use. So I just want to take a pause because I know that was just kind of an update of everything that we have completed for our larger projects over the last 9 months or so. So if anyone has any questions, I can field questions now on some of what we've completed before I jump into revenues and expenditures.
Yeah, Ms. Wade, thank you. Commissioner Simmons does have a question.
Mayor,
sure.
At the Northside Park, how many additional parking spaces were created? Because I knew parking was an issue.
Yeah, so we heard from seniors. I mean, that was their first and foremost concern. I want to say, I don't know the exact count, but it was close to 40 additional parking spaces.
Okay, great. And also, Duval, the boardwalk. I have not seen any updates on that. I would love to see some photos of the boardwalk. Did you all complete that?
Yes, and that was completed, I want to say close to 18 months, or it's more than a year ago. I know we're past our 1 year warranty period, but I know we take some beautiful photos. Angie Gould has a great artistic eye, and I can definitely pass that along to you, Commissioner.
Did you all upgrade the pavilion at that location? Other than the boardwalk, was there any other work done at that park?
There is not to date. As we get into the later part of this discussion, we're proposing to add an approved parking area, an additional path around that stormwater pond to connect the pavilion and that pond kind of to the rest of the walking trail. And we would also like to add a playground as well in that area.
It's a great location. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question about the electrical upgrades at Depot Park. One of the complaints I've heard over the years of when we have the fireworks is those lights are very bright. Are the lights now able to be dimmable, or is that still not an ability of those lights? Or can be changed in intensity?
I mean, we can definitely turn them off. I don't think that, I think we'd have to add some additional infrastructure to be able to dim the lights.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, Ms. White, go ahead and continue, please.
Okay, so we're going to jump over here to our revenues and expenditures. So these are preliminary numbers for fiscal year 20. You know, the audit doesn't complete until March. And then I pulled the revenues and expenditures through the end of December of 2020. So that fiscal year 21 line item. And so funds received, you can see about $29 million, and we've expended about 14. And for simplicity's sake, we did not look at any interdepartmental fund transfers, so it's just kind of holistically funds coming in and then funds being expended.
Commissioner Simmons.
How many years do we have left with this program?
Sorry, can you say that again? How many years do we have left?
How many years do we have left with this program?
We're just about halfway through. So it began in January of 2017, and it's an 8-year program. So yeah, we're right at the halfway mark.
Okay, thank
you. Okay. So I just want to add a caveat to this slide where I'm not an economist, because if I was, I would have bought a lot of Tesla and Bitcoin a little while ago. But I've just wanted to show everyone kind of what revenue we have received, at least in fiscal year 20. And then this is a projection from the Florida Department of Revenue's Office of Tax Research for fiscal year 21. So the 2022 numbers through the end of the sales tax, that is my best guess. But again, I'm not an economist, so I had kind of a moderate projection and then a more aggressive, strong growth projection, just to try to see, big picture, how much money could potentially be brought in with this 8-year half-cent sales tax. And then I take into account the county partnership money as well. So from fiscal year 19 to 20 with COVID-19, revenues decreased by about 12%. So definitely a significant impact. But the projection for 2021, again, is just a projection from the state, but it seemed it was higher than I had anticipated. Okay. And no questions there. We'll keep moving. So on this slide, I just want to kind of take a look at, what revenues have come in to date, what we have spent, and also kind of what we have earmarked for our maintenance and our operation costs over the duration of the program, as well as staffing costs and other costs. And so this slide is showing you approximately how much money we have remaining to dedicate towards capital improvements. So this slide is showing our expenditures by fiscal year. So you can see we're in fiscal year 2017. We spent less than $500,000. The program is really ramped up, and I'm very proud that during this last fiscal year, we spent just over $7 million. My goal for the program has always been to spend between $6 and $7 million a year. on capital improvement projects. And so we've met our goal. And if we can keep up that level of productivity, I think that's going to be very successful. Okay. So now so I just want to see if there's any questions, I guess, on revenues and expenditures
Now, please
before
continue.
we jump into future projects.
You can continue.
Okay, great. So I think this is the fun part of today's conversation. So now we get to discuss kind of a big picture of how we might spend the remaining $35 million or so of projected revenue. But my main focus of today is to kind of receive your input and guidance on projects that staff is proposing to work on in this fiscal year. Because we can't work on everything at once, but we're ready to take on more projects in 2021. So we have two spreadsheets I'm going to share with you. And I printed some hard copies and brought them by City Hall earlier this week. So did everyone receive an 11 by 17 of a Gantt chart in the spreadsheet?
Yeah, everyone's got them.
Awesome. Okay. Just because there's so much information, I thought it would be pretty hard for everyone to be viewing on the screen. Okay. So the spreadsheet that we're going to be kind of moving over towards, so it's building upon what you were last presented with back in March of 2020. But staff really put a lot of thought into, how COVID-19 has impacted us, and it's given us a new perspective. So I think we've modified some of the department priorities with a focus within the PRCA divisions more on the replacement of existing infrastructure, replacing what has failed, over expansion, just because we're definitely cognizant that the city's tax revenue is going to be impacted to some extent in the years to come. So we've identified about 40 projects that we would like to complete with the second half of the sales tax. So that's a ton of information to go through. And so my thought today is that we could, kind of focus mainly on the projects that staff is recommending to start working on in this year. But we can obviously field questions on any of the proposed work, because I think it's important to look big picture, but then also kind of take a step back and look short term as well. And I'm going to switch over to the spreadsheet. So this is organized by the division within PRCA. So we start off with the cultural division, and so it's by division, and it's also by the division's priorities for work. So you see here, it's their ranking. We've also have kind of order of magnitude costs. And then we have a proposed kickoff year. So that kickoff year could be design, it could be public outreach, it could be a lot of different elements. And then we have the proposed construction year. Okay. And then the Gantt chart that I created. So this is like a really high level view of just kind of showing the prioritization of these 40 or so projects. These are projects that are, underway, and this is showing their proposed construction timeline. And then we get into kind of batching these future projects. Again, just kind of big picture, looking at priorities and showing that we can't work on everything at once. And so this would be kind of how projects are rolled out.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How do we want to handle questions on this? Do you want us to just ask as we go, or do you want to hold them for the end? Or, 'cause I've got several.
I think clarifying questions as we go, if we're getting into our sort of opinion on priorities or rankings, I think if we can wait till the end.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Good, Ms. Wade.
Okay. So is everyone, I guess, okay with us kind of focusing on the projects that we're hoping to start work on this year? Or would people like to go line by line and talk about everything we would like to touch in the next 4 to 5 years?
I'm good with this year with the caveat that if there are projects that, I know I have one particular one that jumped out at me that we want to pull out and discuss or ask sort of when or how or whether we should bump it up, that we do it that way. But I think starting with what you have planned for this year is helpful. I see Mr. Phillips has his hand up and Commissioner Simmons as well. So let me get Commissioner Simmons and then Mr. Phillips will go over to you.
On the construction schedule, can you elaborate more on this? Because I'm seeing the schedule for 21 to 25, and I have January, the month, January 21. So is that the year? The 21 is the year?
Yeah.
The month
yeah,
and the year.
so
So I'm looking at the month and the year for certain projects, and it's telling me what stage these certain projects are in. Is that what I'm looking at for this construction schedule?
yeah, so if you look at this bar across the top, so it's kind of just a high level kind of timeline, but it's just showing you, so we're in January of 21 right now, and I printed this on, the 22nd of December, but this is just projected construction dates. And so currently Unity Park is in construction. The Dwight H. Hunter Pool facility renovations is about to kick off in just a couple weeks. And so this is just showing that, these are projects that are currently underway, getting ready to start construction. And this is looking at the kind of the future batch of projects. And again, they're not all going to take the exact amount of, same amount of time, but I just wanted to show everyone that we can't work on everything at once. And so if we're prioritizing these projects to, for us to start working on them in this year, 2021, that hypothetically we could be under construction in January of 22.
So
really rough.
Let me just ask you this real quick, Betsy. So what I'm looking at is the projects that are already in the wheelhouse currently. This is what we're going to do for right now.
Correct. So on the left, these are projects that are, we already have underway. So Clarence or Kelly, so that project is currently out for bid. We think it's going to be starting construction, in late March or early April. So these are just kind of placeholder dates for work that is coming online pretty soon. And then we have the future batch of projects kind of shown here, just to let everyone know that, they'd have to be kind of a staggered start for future work. And I've just kind of batched them together into groups as staff prioritize them.
Okay, see, and I think this is the confusion that I have. I understand what you're saying, but what I'm looking at, for instance, is the Clarence R. Kelly Community Center and Park, and it's highlighted in blue for improvement, replacement of existing park trailer facility. So I don't see the green construction for that. So where are we? Are we in the improvement area, or where are we on this?
Yeah, so I apologize. I should have explained this. So I was asked to take a look at long-term operation maintenance costs. Okay. And so I was asked to differentiate between projects that are improving an existing facility versus a new park or facility, which would require additional operation and maintenance or maybe staffing. So just really being cognizant of, the long-term budget and how that's going to impact the general government budget as these projects are being taken over. Okay. And then projects in green had some type of land acquisition. And so the timeline just gets a lot more challenging for projects when we're waiting on acquiring land. So yeah, I apologize. I should have explained that up front.
Yeah, so what this depicts and what I'm looking at is everything in blue is an existing park or structure that's going to be improved upon. Everything that's in green is something that's new. We maybe acquired it or it's new. Is that what I'm
Or
looking at?
green is where, yes, where we need land acquisition to make the project happen. So some of these
Okay.
trail projects require land acquisition. So they're, so we're working with our land rights coordinator, Kara,
Okay.
to get the land so we can then pursue the project. So the timeline is just a little bit less certain. And then we'll discuss this festival and arts park, which is absolutely contingent upon finding land.
Okay. Yeah, because this is.
And so projects that are shown in orange would have kind of a larger impact on the kind of the general government budget. So Parks and Rec would have to absorb a new facility. And so a new facility being a new trail or the Lincoln Yard Trail project. We're also looking at potentially taking over the Bulwer Springs Historic Waterworks building from GRU wastewater and bringing it into PRCA's kind of bringing it underneath the PRCA department. And so that would increase O&M costs.
So is this a construction schedule or not?
Yeah. I mean, loosely, it's, yes, it is a high-level construction schedule.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Feldman, I saw your hand go up and then your hand go down. Did you want to jump in here before I go to Mr. Phillips?
No, I was just going to help qualify, but Betsy and Commissioner Simmons, I think, are on the same page now.
Okay, thank you. Then over to Mr. Phillips. Mr. Phillips, if you're talking, I think you're on mute. Okay, maybe I'm just...
This is Deborah. I think he's having technological issues, but I'm sure if he could speak, he probably would want to just reiterate that all of the projects that Betsy mentioned have been reviewed and supported by the advisory boards.
Oh, very good. Okay.
I think he's
That's
having some technological issues. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for adding that clarity. So let's go back to you, Betsy, and we'll go over the current fiscal year's planned projects, and then we'll turn back to the convention to see if there's anything we want to switch around, add, delete, that sort of thing.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to focus on projects that are shown the proposed kickoff year in 2021. So the first project on the list is a project within the Cultural Affairs Division. And so this project, so it kind of stems from our cultural center discussion, but this is a new project. It's something we have not discussed formally with the City Commission to date. And so this is a potential festival and arts park. And so this is the highest priority of the cultural affairs staff. So this festival and arts park would become the official permanent home of the Ogden Naval Fair and would have the potential to host a whole slew of events and festivals, and it would be rented out to other entities. So with the loss of the Alachua County Fairgrounds, staff felt like there was a lot of demand in this area just to have a 60+ acre site to host such events. So we're asking for, I guess, your permission to to kind of look at a order of magnitude budget. And again, we don't know if 60+ acres that are relatively dry are available within the city limits. But before, we got too far down the road, we just wanted to see how everyone felt about potentially pursuing this work.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I got whoever was first appropriately. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I know we talked about this a while back and the need for a cultural center. And can you remind us the scope? I know you said 60 acres, and I don't recall that being the scope that the commission was looking at. If I can recall, we were looking at maybe a building or a facility to host indoor cultural events. And so what exactly are we talking about now? We're talking about something to emulate the fairgrounds, or are we talking about a specific building? I just would like to have an update because we had this conversation a while back, and if you guys can just update us.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Commissioner Simmons. So this particular project, so it kind of be part of that cultural network of facilities, but not specifically a building. And so I believe staff, they're well aware that Hogtown Medieval Fair is very popular, well loved. And by, the loss of the Alachua County Fairgrounds, a lot of other groups who would hold events there, I mean, they've lost their space as well. And so staff felt that there is a demand for, a site similar to the fairgrounds. So again, quite a bit of acreage, not too many facilities, similar to when you go to Hogtown. So there's electrical, there's some restrooms, potentially some type of smaller building for supplies and materials, but for the most part, it'd be for outdoor festivals.
Okay, because I recall where we were specifically looking at a place where we can have events for the residents in an indoor area, a actual cultural event center, if you would. And so it went from that to a whole fairground type facility. Mm-hmm. And so I think my concern or what I'm thinking is it's going to be, and it may not be, extremely difficult to find what you're talking about in the city limits. Yeah. 60 acres versus looking at locations for a cultural center. So I would like to be realistic in what we're trying to achieve here. Are we trying to achieve a fairground deal? Are we trying to achieve a cultural arts center? What exactly are we trying to achieve, or are we trying to do both? And I would like for us to be realistic at what we're trying to do, and have a more deeper conversation about our priorities as it relates to the cultural aspect of this discussion. I just think that we were all in a good place early on when we were talking about a cultural center for people because we do not have that here, particularly in East Gainesville or downtown. We talked about how visitors come in town and they have to go to the Center of Performing Arts, and how great it would be to have something in our city core, downtown or East Gainesville or something of that nature. And I think now we've kind of put that on the back burner and just want to try to find a fairground. So I really want us to talk about a cultural center or a location, and I want us to bring that back to the table. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear your concerns, Commissioner Simmons, and I agree. I think we need both. I would like for us to consider if we're looking at a cultural center downtown or something of kind of that large grandeur, similar, maybe not performing arts center, but something like that. I do think maybe we should look at putting a proposal together to try to get tourist development funding from it as one of the funding sources. So I think that's something we should try to put together. As for a large site, I think there's a very big need for. I mean, the Hogtown Medieval Fair is very popular. It's also a moneymaker. We make a good amount of money from it. So I think any money we would spend, we would make back. And I mean, is our profit like $250,000 a year on Hogtown Creek? Is that correct? Or trying to remember? Or not Hogtown Creek, on the Hogtown Medieval Festival or Fair?
I'm going to let Steve weigh in just because I've not been heavily involved in the programming of Hogtown. I mean, so hopefully Steve can come on the line, or Russell Etling can assist, or we can get back to you.
Yeah, just get back to us when you get the
So
answer.
I know it is one. I'm fairly sure it's one of our profit centers for our city. So I think we do need to find a place. But I also think it's having a place where we can have larger festivals. Definitely as we grow as a city, I think it's important, and to be able to get that. I think it's gonna be very difficult to get, but I think also having like music festivals and other things like that, I think would be important to have. So I'm supportive of moving forward on that first item, but I also believe that we should move forward on what Commissioner Simmons is talking about as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, both. That's where we need to be. And I know that that's difficult, and that's why we have such amazing professionals on our team, because you can accomplish great things for us. It's critical that we have open space to host the medieval fair and the Renaissance fair, and as well as other potential opportunities. Losing the fairgrounds is a big deal. I mean, it was a big deal. And frankly, for that property to continue to sit there, just in case something happens, is a little bit frustrating. But that's not, anything we can solve today. We absolutely need that open space to be able to host a variety of things. But we do need a cultural center of some size and scope as well. I'm frankly not sure the best way to proceed with that. Both those items, I think, should qualify for TDC funding. There's no reason that we can't have multiple partners on this, because it's not something that only benefits the city of Gainesville. So yes, I hope we'll reach out to for TDC funding, and then the other funding we might be able to approach there. For a cultural center, we also might want to consider that something that could work in the 8th Avenue Waldo Road area, and work with GCRA funding on that as well. There are a lot of ways to approach this, but it is a priority to find some open field space that we could use for Hogtown, because that's an ongoing program that we can't just put on the back burner. So yes, both we need to pursue. Thank you.
Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we've had these discussions in varying different topics and forms. Park versus a center. What does a center mean? Those types of things. So, I'm really looking for some specific options. I would like to think that we can get this moving this year, but without something sort of specific to begin debating, it feels like a recurring sort of conversation. I would like to mention, looking at just general comments for the whole slate, I wanted to talk about the Glen Springs deletion and what happened there. I'm not. I just want to know, did negotiations break down, or it says that the property is just too degraded, and that's pretty disappointing.
Sorry, people are texting me left and right. So are you jumping down to one of the nature projects?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of broaden my comments to the whole slate. So yeah, I was looking at the Glen Springs deletion on page 2 of the document.
Okay. So I feel like this is a huge conversation to have, and again, I'm not sure how we want to structure it, just because we have a limited amount of time. If people want to just focus on kind of what we're proposing for projects that could start in 2021, or if we want to open it up to a more expansive conversation, I'm not sure how to guide this. I'm going to look to the mayor.
Well, I'm not going to tell a commissioner they can't ask a question, but I also agree with you that some of these, need to have sort of more developed and more focused conversation. And we can reschedule it for, you know, another meeting or a special meeting. I mean, we may need to have just a special meeting on wild spaces, public places, and where we go. I kind of view today as more of an update.
Okay, very, very well. And I'm happy to follow up with specific questions for projects that are more down the road. But I guess then to cap my comments, I don't really have any feedback for the Cultural Center or Festival and Arts Park. I'd love to give feedback. It's something that we've been, you know, sort of talking about in the ethereal sense, but without options in front of us. It's, you know, I'd love you to bring them back. I guess that's my feedback.
Okay, thank you. Before I go back around a second time, first of all, it's great to dream about tourist development money, but if the county gets their way and they build their sports park in unincorporated Alachua County, there's not going to be any tourist development money for quite some time. I mean, longer than any of us will be on this commission. So we can ask, but they've been pretty clear, including having that as their only item on their legislative agenda for our state legislature, which is just, again, disappointing. Well, disappointing probably isn't a strong enough word. Mr. Feldman, where?
Yes.
So it's been suggested repeatedly that an appropriate place for this sort of large outdoor venue for the medieval fair, but other types of events as well, could potentially be, and we need to come up with a different name for it, but the site formerly known as Coppers. Where are we with that remediation timeline, and what conversations have been had surrounding how that adaptive reuse might fit into some of our goals with that? Well, with our goals in general, but specifically perhaps this item.
So, Mayor, Commissioners, I think with regard to Coppers, we are at least 2 years, if not longer, from having the site in any type of condition where we could look at adaptive reuse of the property. But I have to, point out too, we don't own the site, and so acquisition of the site is probably going to be a critical piece in the timeline. There's a lot of money that's being put into remediating the site, and I believe that there's going to be some expectation from the owners of the property to get some sort of return on their investment. And I'm not sure what that would look like. I have not had conversations with them at this point. But as we're following the remediation, it's still several years away before we could even look at the potential acquisition of a portion of the site or the whole site on there. So we've been keeping that sort of in the back of our minds as we go forward, but nothing definitive now.
Okay, and that's a conversation I think I'd like to have at the federal level to see what support they might be able to give us when it comes to the acquisition portion. I mean, I think what that ultimately would mean is the closure of the Fed's fulfillment of their involvement in this. Because whatever happens there is going to be incredibly limited. And I think we could probably put it to better use than trying to depend on, the private sector to, I don't know what they. I mean, we've heard every idea under the sun for that. How many of them are likely to happen and be, economically viable? I have no idea. However, beyond all that, I want to work very hard to see if we can find a piece of property that would satisfy the needs of large outdoor events. I don't want everything that falls under that category going out to Newberry. And, I think that's important for just the cultural identity and vitality of our city. I very much agree with Commissioner Simmons and my other colleagues' points that we also need to have an indoor space that can accommodate a different type of activity than a large outdoor space. I think part of the goal with Thelma Bolton is that, although, I think that's smaller than what many of my colleagues are envisioning. But with that investment in Thelma Bolton, it will be a much more attractive option for many of our local organizations looking to do performances or have banquets or those other uses where and frankly that we just have a lack of space in our city for those kinds of things. So I think kind of going all the way down the list to the next item, I think it is important for us to move forward with that, and I think it gets us some of the way there while we work out what might be possible for this festival and cultural art space. So with that, I'll go back to Commissioner Simmons and then Commissioner Ward. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, Mayor, and I totally agree with you 100%. And I just wanted to remind the commission, I don't know if you all remember, but the Cultural Affairs Department did a presentation a while back on various locations where they thought that a cultural center would be feasible with existing buildings and non-existing locations. So we do have that information. Maybe it can be updated. Maybe we can have them bring that back to us again via email or whatever. But I think, to your point, Mayor, we can do both. I think the need is there for both, and we have already started the process when it comes to the actual cultural center discussion early on. And I think Thelma Bolton Center, we already have that. It's a wonderful asset. It's in a great location. It's a wonderful building. The acoustics is awesome. So I think that's a great place to look at, just to start the conversation and to look at that more deeply and how we can really make that a cultural center location. And it is the name itself. The building is historic. It's beautiful. So I think that it fits the bill. But I think we do need to start looking at locations. And you're absolutely right. We don't need to have everything go to Newberry. We don't need to have things go outside of the city limits. We need to start looking at ways that we can enhance our culture identity here in the city of Gainesville. So thank you.
This congregation says amen. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the purposes of what I think you're asking, I'm just going to go through real quick and make a couple comments about several of these things. Yes, we've all been clear that we want to do both cultural center and festival park. It's absolutely necessary. We're moving forward right with, well, we're not, it's 20, with Thelma Bolton. We have things moving forward there, correct?
That is correct. Design is underway and we anticipate construction beginning towards the end of this year.
Okay, so the items listed on the page we're looking at are good to go. Is that accurate?
So
So Mayor, if I can just jump in.
Yeah, please, thank you.
If you go to, and I think this is what's up on the screen now, what we call slide 41, which are the cultural division priorities on there. You all have seen this spreadsheet before. What I'd like to do, and maybe in just the interest of time, is go through where the changes are or where the staff needs input. So for example, you just talked about the festival and arts park. It's clear that we need to have a further discussion with the commission and schedule a time to have just this topic. You'll see at the bottom here that there are Rosa B. Williams Center improvements, which we're recommending are not to be undertaken, and we can explain why. So I think maybe in the interest of time, if we can go through the next couple of slides and show you the changes to the document instead of going through each one. And I know that will address Commissioner Ariola's question about Glen Springs and so forth. And then maybe perhaps open up to further questions.
Right, so I'm fine with all that, but I have exactly the same concern as Commissioner Ariola on Glen Springs. That's gonna need to be a bigger conversation. And because this is, I mean, I'll take responsibility, but it's the first I'm hearing of it. So, yeah, let's go ahead with the presentation, but I'm very pleased with a lot of things I see, particularly on the Gantt chart. The Howard Bishop improvements, thrilled to see those moving forward. That's something we've been talking about for a long time. Really glad that's going to be done this year. I'm exceptionally glad that the Lob Valley Woods Nature Park boardwalk renovations are on schedule to be done spring and summer. I get questions about that every single day, and I'm glad we have it scheduled on this because that's a priority. It's a multi-district thing that we get a lot of, at least I get a lot of questions about. Glad to see Boulder Springs moving on to something we can actually go forward with, because again, that's something we get a lot of community questions about. But I definitely have questions about what we're doing with 8th Avenue and Waldo Road and how that intersects and interacts with other potential funding sources through the city. And but yeah, this is maybe not the day for the Glen Springs conversation, but we need to have a bigger conversation about that. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Santos, you're okay wait until after? Okay, thank you. So Ms. Waite, if you'll just start going through these slides here, I guess explain sort of substantial changes since the last time we looked at this, and then we'll turn back to the commission for any questions or comments. Thanks.
Absolutely, thank you. So for Thelma Bolton, so it is part of that network of cultural amenities that Commissioner Simmons was referencing, and you've already approved us to work on a particular scope. So the design budget has been approved, but I included it in this slide because the construction budget has not been allocated. And so since we're looking holistically at that remaining $35 million or so of funds that are going towards capital improvements, I had to include Thelma Bolton just so we make sure we carve out a chunk of those remaining funds to go towards the construction. So not to make, I apologize for making it overly confusing, but yeah, this one was a heavy lift. So the Hippodrome Theater improvements, so that was not included in the last spreadsheet you saw back in March. And so that would mainly be cinema renovations and a handful of other projects. And so the downstairs gallery looks beautiful. The upstairs lobby area has been renovated. So this is hitting just a few more items that the Hippodrome staff feel are necessary. I think Wilhelmina Johnson Resource Center improvements, so that project was on the list back in March. Thomas Center A Wi-Fi infrastructure is a relatively small project. We're only asking for an allocation of about $13,000. It's a lower priority for cultural affairs, but that is a new proposed project. So people who are renting the building could actually have Wi-Fi that works. And then we have kind of a changed condition with the Rose B. Williams Center. So there was property next to Rose B. Williams that we were hoping to acquire to construct a dedicated parking lot for the center. A private entity purchased that property for more than 10% over the assessed value, and it is no longer an opportunity. So we would ask to allocate the funds that were dedicated for that parking lot to another cultural project. So we have a new proposed project, the Ironwood Golf Course. And so staff is proposing that the facility be kind of, the use be broadened to include some cultural uses as well. And so this project is the addition of a covered area, such as a band shell, and a small building to house bands and performers. And then we have some other infrastructure improvements, the irrigation well pump, and some netting on the driving range. Okay. So the department priorities definitely include the Bulwer Springs Historic Waterworks building. And so this would be a complete renovation of that building. And I think we had briefly discussed this last time. So we're just hoping to move forward. And this is one of the departmental priorities. So we're hoping to actually start those initial design and kind of get into the weeds of this project in this year. The master plan is nothing new. Solar charging stations. So I know a couple of years ago, there was a vision to have solar charging stations at, I think, 10 parks and facilities. But rather than have it as an independent project, I think we're kind of looking on a project by project basis. So as you know, park is being renovating, we're seeing if it makes sense to have solar power rather than have, you know, one larger solar project. So we're asking to reallocate those funds. So the Loblolly Woods Nature Park Boardwalk renovation, I don't know if the city manager would like to speak to this.
Sure. Wasn't planning on it, but
Okay.
but one of the questions we do need to ask is how much of the boardwalk needs to be replaced in a post charter amendment change. In the past, the whole boardwalk was constructed because of the prohibition on paving, but we think that there may be some opportunities to save in some of the dollars if we look at potentially improving the actual path versus just boardwalking the whole thing. So we're going through that evaluation now.
Wait, so we have a cost of what it would take to replace the existing boardwalk, and now staff is exploring some other opportunities. The Alfred Ring Nature Park Improvement Project. So that would be restroom renovations, pavilion repair, signage, and some other improvements. So this would be a partnership project. So there's funding available from a donation to the park, and Wild Spaces would help supplement that funding source for additional improvements. Bulwer Springs, so this would be a renovation of the parking area and other amenities at the trailhead. And we were hoping to initiate that project in conjunction with the Waterworks renovation project and kind of make it just a holistic, larger project. Split Rock we've had on here before. Mornington Nature Center, that was on the list back in March as well. We have, you know, staff is proposing to make some changes to the Sweetwater Wetlands Park project. We're proposing to hold off on the construction of the Prairie Tower and the Solar Tower and to focus more on boardwalk improvements and accessibility improvements at the park. So that is a proposed change. And then as Commissioner Simmons alluded to earlier, so there are future improvements at Duval Park. And this would be a budget for a parking lot, a playground, and a walking path around the stormwater pond. Okay. So we have some nature park infrastructure projects. Most of these are not, I'm trying to think what to highlight. I mean, for most of these, it's accessibility, wayfinding. Okay. We are proposing to push back the construction of the new nature center at Coffin Nature Park. So I think staff is just exceptionally busy getting the Hartman, the Hogton Creek Headwaters Nature Park Center set up. And so they wanted a little bit of time to really get that nature center up and running. And so staff is proposing to delay the construction of the nature center at Coffin until the later years of Wild Spaces. And then we will return to you at a city commission meeting with more information on why staff is proposing to not acquire and redevelop Glen Springs. So this project is new, I believe since March. So Forest Park, we're proposing to increase the budget for Forest Park so we can include a broader range of improvements. We have heard from a variety of user groups that there are needs that are not being met with the city's current infrastructure. I know we've heard from roller derby and bike polo looking for space that they could use. I mean, pickleball is exceptionally popular. And so we're proposing to increase the budget for the Forest Park improvement. This is new as well, Tom Petty Park softball field improvements. So similar to the work that recently took place at Albert Ray Massey Park, we would like to improve the drainage and replace the performance turf at the Tom Petty Park softball fields. So we've improved baseball and now we would like to improve softball. At Albert Ray Massey Park, we would like to kick off a pretty large playground improvement project in 2021. And so we're really excited. So staff is interested in creating a fully accessible park at Albert Ray Massey Park, the city's busiest park. This would also include some amenities for children with autism and other disabilities. So kind of trail projects are ongoing, but I wanted to make sure we set aside an appropriate budget so we could continue working on some of the trail projects that have already been proposed. We have a new project proposed at Cora P. Roberson Park. So this would be making the parking lot accessible, resurfacing the parking lot, adding lighting, new signage, basketball court upgrades as well. And so that is a new project being brought to you. Kiwanis Challenge Park, that was on the list back in March. Woodland Park, we're proposing to delay towards the end of this iteration of Wild Spaces. So that is the change with Woodland Park. So we are coordinating and we do plan on completing that project. There's just been some delays for Gainesville Housing's project. Okay, at Sweetwater Branch Park, so that is a newly proposed project. So this one includes new site furnishings, accessibility improvements, a drinking fountain, and then redevelopment of the children's play area. Smoky Bear Park, so there's recently a couple additional acres that were acquired by the city. So Smoky Bear Park was expanded and staff would like to work on a master plan for the southern portion of the property that was newly acquired. We also need to conduct a needs assessment because the old Forest Service building is now owned by the city. So there's no immediate construction proposed at Smoky Bear Park, but I mean, staff would like to start in some of those planning stages. And for recreation, so this is a newly proposed project by staff. So staff would like to replace some existing lights with energy efficient infrastructure and also light additional multipurpose fields. They are looking at the Tom Petty Park multipurpose field, Fred Cohn Park softball field, and the basketball court area. So I think that'd be a lot of bang for the buck as far as increasing the amount of lit multi-purpose fields in the city of Gainesville, which are in very high demand. And we're hoping to start work on that in 2021. Okay. There are currently some city pool improvements underway. So this line item was increasing the budget for that project to include a couple additional items. The parking lot really needs to be reconstructed at H. Virgin Cherry Pool. And we also need a new roof on that building, along with some other improvements. But there's a renovation project underway, and this was kind of getting additional funds just to make it a more holistic project. We have some recreation center Wi-Fi. Okay. And I know the renovation of the rec center, Albert Ray Massey Park, that was in the last presentation. Northeast 8th Avenue and Waldo, so we have a placeholder budget, but I believe the Capper department, I believe, is leading that larger project. And the Cone Pavilion event space, staff did not recommend pursuing that project at this point in time, though that can obviously be discussed. And that was all on the laundry list of projects.
Okay, thank you, Ms. White. Let's go back to the commission. Commissioner Hayes Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Concerning the La Valley Woods Nature Park or boardwalk renovations, I think now that that has been removed from the charter that we can't do paved trails, I do think we should look at that section between 8th Avenue and I guess 16th Avenue of, let's start that as the first chunk of the what the new trail or Hogtown Creek trail would be. So I don't think we should just look at just replacing it. I think we should look at what will our trail look like in the future and what do we want it to be and do that. Let's see. The Rosie B. Williams. So I guess my question is, so I know is a portion of that building is owned by the police department. Is that, or not under the police department? Is that correct? The northern portion?
I'm going to ask Steve Phillips to weigh in on the ownership.
I mean, I guess that the north, I mean, the Roosevelt Williams building and kind of complex is very closed off, and the northern portion of the building has bars in the window, and it's not a very inviting place. And I guess that's one of the things I like for us to look at is just at least opening it up a little bit more so it's not as closed off. And there might be some cheaper ways to do that. As far as the Glen Springs, I agree with my colleagues. I think I think we should continue moving forward on that. The other projects I'm okay with. I do want to bring to kind of thought, I know this seems far away, but times come quickly, of the renewal of the tax coming in 2024. It's not that far away when you start thinking about how long it takes to plan to get the projects and get it moving. Also, 2 of the county commissioners who were the main kind of pushers of it are gone. So I think it's something we can't delay and need to start, I think, in some sense later this year, start having those conversations. And to that same point on the Vision 2035 master plan, I know it's set for FY 2023 to work on, but I don't know if that is too late in the process and we should do FY 22 too, so it lines up with hopefully the renewal of that project. But I think that's something we need to start discussing with the county, hopefully relatively soon, so it's not something we get caught up in the last moment and we get into big fights like we did before. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to talk about the Tom Petty Park, where we have, I lost my place. I believe we set aside $350,000 for bleacher improvements, shade, accessibility, and I think it was more of a parks priority. I think we need to look at the whole park. You have racquetball courts or tennis courts. The construction is old. It's maybe in the 80s, built in the 80s. And I think we need to look at the whole park as a whole versus just looking at the softball fields and the drainage. I think we need to take a step back, maybe do a master plan and redesign the whole park. It has a lot of great potential. It's a very popular park. You have folks that want to come and they do tennis, racquetball. It's closed off. It has like seedy locations. We need to look at the lighting. We need to do a whole master plan, I believe, of that park and make it brighter, make it more welcoming, and just look at ways that we can really take advantage of the location and make it more of a family-oriented park. So I would like for us to really maybe just delay this part and have staff look at how we can really make this park a really nice park versus just doing a piecemeal approach to the Tom Petty Park. That's one thing. Second, the Cora P. Robeson Park. I see that we have, and that was formerly known as Tumbling Creek. So we have the playground equipment, resurfacing the parking lot, looking at the basketball courts. But one thing that we're missing is that it's attached to a creek. So I think we need to look at some of the nature component and aspects of that park and make that a whole total nice nature park as well as a sports park. Look at maybe a nice, I remember it was a boardwalk there. I don't know what the condition of it is. It's a nice, beautiful park. And so I think when we drive past it, we just see basketball courts and old playground equipment, but you have rabbits, you have all type of nice, beautiful creatures, animals in that area, and it's alongside a creek. So I think we need to look at ways that we can enhance that part of the park as well, in addition to resurfacing basketball courts. I would love for us to look at that too. I love the idea of, I think it was a band shell at Ironwood Golf Course. I think that's great. I love that. And I don't know where that is on the list, but we need to make that number one. I'm all for that. Also, I love what we have here. It's just some things, Betsy, that I would like to see modified. And like, again, Tom Petty is one of those parts. I don't want to miss the opportunity now while that's on the forefront, enhancing that, looking at the nature component of Cora P. Robeson, take advantage of the creek that's alongside it. Also, you talked about, the Fred Cone Park. We scratched that out for what reason? It was for a pavilion event space.
So, Commissioner, I can speak to this. So if back when we made this presentation in February of 2020, we had added in dollars for building a pavilion event space on the on the southeast corner of the park. And when we brought that to the commission, there didn't seem to be an appetite to move forward with it, so we took it off this plan.
I think we need to revisit that simply because of the need of an event space. I think we need to bring that back to the table. I think that's another conversation we may need to have with this commission. We do not currently have anything like that in East Gainesville, and we lack that space. Folks lack places to go in open fields like we just discussed earlier, like the fairground, and I think that we need to put that back on the table. One other thing, the Sweetwater Wetlands Park boardwalk improvements. Betsy, when you talk about the boardwalk and accessibility, are you talking, what exactly are you talking about when you want to improve on that?
So at Sweetwater Wetlands Park, it is really unfortunate that we're seeing a lot of wood rotting.
Okay.
So we have a couple different projects we're looking at. So staff is evaluating potentially getting an electric vehicle that would be a lot quieter, less disturbing to the wildlife, maybe a tram to provide tours for the elderly or accessibility limited folks. And then we're also looking at improving the walking surfaces within cell 1 to get you to the boardwalks. Because that rough kind of aggregate surface, we hear complaints about that all the time. So we're looking at kind of an accessibility project. But we've seen wood already rotting out in the park. So it is inevitable that additional sections of the boardwalk, they're showing, that they're going to need to be replaced at some point, and there's a lot of boardwalk out there. So we're trying to make sure we set aside some funds so we're ready to address the issues as they come.
Okay, that's great. And I also agree with my colleagues about the Glen Springs. We need to address that as well. But other than that, I think this is a great project priority. Just some of the things that I would like to see addressed, as I already mentioned. But I think for the most part, you guys have done a wonderful job. And thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jesus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we're going as a larger city and more multifamily housing, there's less yards, and a lot of people do have dogs. And I still, it's one of the things I think we should look at when we are renewing the parks or looking at parks is adding or fixing up dog parks, just because I think we'll see more of a need over the coming years. And to Commissioner Simmons on the Cone Park, I think maybe the Ironwood could fit that need, especially since there are no neighborhoods to the east of that, and the sound, and it's by the airport anyway, so it's already kind of loud. So that might be a way, because I agree, I think there is some need space, and that might be able to fit both of those and then not have as much neighborhood concern as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. See, this is the part of the discussion that, even though it's starting to get late into the meeting, this is where the wheels start turning for me, and we start really thinking about stuff. I love the Ironwood idea, absolutely love it. I was at the Halloween event that we had at Ironwood, and it was fantastic. I mean, people really enjoyed being there, and seemed to me to appreciate that the city was offering something at a city venue that was different than what we normally do. And that really started me thinking about, well, what else could we do with Ironwood? I'm not saying we shouldn't golf there. That's fine. Don't get me wrong. But if there's opportunity to do other things on the property that we already have at Ironwood, particularly event type things and music venues, and as Commissioner Santos pointed out, it's in the airport flight path, so it's not going to engender a lot of noise complaints. So it's well suited for that. But thinking about Cone Park, maybe that's our opportunity for, or an adjacent space if we could get use of it. Maybe that's our opportunity for the arts park. For a home for Hogtown Medieval Fair, that sort of Renaissance Fair. I always get it confused. It's a big space, and it has the added benefit of then bringing more people into East Gainesville, where they can experience East Gainesville and get to know that it's part of our city, and bring things into, so it's there for the residents who live near it, but it's also there for neighbors who are from other parts of Gainesville or from other towns. So I think there's opportunity to revisit that. And we did have a discussion about it nearly a year ago now, but I'd really like to revisit that and see what the possibilities are for both Ironwood and Fred Cone Park to work together. And I want to say also with Tom Petty Park, and I want us to take care of what exists there. I don't want us to say, well, we'll deal with this in a few years. But that is an opportunity for a park that means a lot to a lot of people in Gainesville and has been there for a very long time. And I will tell you that when I went a few years to elementary school at St. Patrick's across the street, and we used Northeast Park then as our athletic fields for PE, and a whole lot of what is there right now looks exactly like it did back in the 70s. So a lot of it, frankly, needed some renovation back then. So the idea of a larger renovation and visioning for Tom Petty Park, I think would do us well. That doesn't mean I don't want to, fix what needs fixing now and have it more usable, because it is a very well used park. but its placement is such that it brings a variety of neighborhoods together, a variety of established neighborhoods in our city, and gets used by a whole lot of different people. And as we continue to have conversations about things like the infinity loop and things like that, it can really be a cornerstone for a whole lot more than it is right now. So I would like to put a pin in that and have a bigger conversation about Tom Petty Park, Fred Cone Park, and Ironwood, and the possibilities that revolve around all three. Thank you.
Thank you. So in just listening to all of you, and first of all, Ms. Wade, thank you very much for your work on preparing this and being available to answer or clarify some of our questions. So these are the things that I've heard people bring up that bear some more discussion. Future sort of expansion of amenities or uses of Cone Park, Tom Petty Park, and then the Glen Springs discussion. Those are the big three. So what I'm thinking with those, as we're about to move into our last item on the agenda and scheduling our general policy meetings for the rest of the quarter, is we could have an item on one of those meetings to specifically drill down on those three things. I will tell you right now, Commissioner, that Simmons, that for Tom Petty Park, I think I'm in concurrence with what Commissioner Moore said. The items that are suggested for the lighting improvements, the sort of court improvements, that sort of thing, I want to do those, and I don't see us like moving the courts or anything. So there's value right now. I do think before this particular tax expires, we could use some of these funds to conduct a community engagement and visioning process, so we could get a plan in place that would be really helpful to take and show folks, if you renew this next time, this is what will be high on the list. Because I think to do what you're doing, we'd have to reallocate so much money. We'd just have to terminate a lot of other projects to make it happen. Plus the timeline, I don't know if it is even possible. But we could do the development of the vision and the plan and sort of have that in our pockets. So if it gets renewed, year one, that's ready to go. So I think there's still a lot of potential for that. But unless there's objection from the commission, and I don't know if this is for a motion, Commissioner, or not, but just setting aside an item on one of those general policy for Cone, Petty, and Glen Springs discussion. Everything else I'm fine with. I'm fine with the changes. I understand them. I just want to keep working and keep banging out these amazing projects. I can't tell you how many folks just approach all of us with, frankly, some incredible improvements that I haven't seen or been to yet, but they have, and it's making a huge difference in our community. So I just want to keep moving the, as they say, matriculating the ball down the field, and so I'm fine, with the exception of those three that we'll come back and talk about with more. Commissioner Santos?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we need a motion. Hopefully we can just do it in the next item, but I do think Ironwood should be part of that too, because we're talking about what are the expanded uses there as well, and kind of how that might all tie together.
Sure. Yeah, I'll add that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Okay. Mr. Manager, Ms. Wade, are there any other clarifying points that you need us to address, or are you generally okay with the update you've given, and we'll take these 4 items up at a future meeting?
I'm good.
Okay. Sweet.
Betsy, I think we're fine.
Okay, excellent. So let's, don't have a motion, but we'll go ahead and turn it over to Adam for public comment.
Is that my cue, Mr. Mayor, or are we looking for a motion?
Nope, that's you.
All right, we do have one public comment. Mr. Nathan Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adam. Good afternoon, commissioners. Nathan Scott. So listening to the discussion, there seems to be a lot of the different ideas, a lot of juggling of projects on the part of staff. Thought that the discussion regarding the Hippodrome was very interesting. I mean, my understanding that's a nonprofit organization, but it seems that tons of money has been thrown at that. And continues to be thrown at that. Not that it's not a worthy cause, but wild spaces in public places, only a finite number of people can go to the theater, whereas parks and recreation, I think, are more tangible assets to our community as a whole. And I think Commissioner Simmons touched upon that too in terms of some parks. So again, I might ask the commission to kind of reevaluate how much of the money is being allocated towards a Hippodrome versus other projects that are equally worthy. I think I was reading the history, and there's a lot of $2 million renovations in '79, and it just completed some renovations, and now we're talking about more renovations. Trying to make it, I guess, opulent. But wild spaces in public places could also be used for Depot Park, and the commission hasn't considered this yet. A major portion of everyone's GRU gas bill is recovery surcharge for the gas works, which is basically the remediation of Depot Park. And I think that's been accomplished over, yet we're still being charged. So it seems to me that, if community, Depot Park is, a core asset of downtown, and perhaps wild spaces and public places money, majority of that ought to be used towards that. And that would help you guys lower our GRU bills, at least on the gas side, because we continue to pay this excessive surcharge, and frankly, the majority of the people, including myself, have trouble putting our finger on exactly where that money is going to. So that's just some food for thought. But Depot Park is pretty nice, but we continue to pay through our GRU bills. And if you got this taxpayer-funded initiative, I think maybe those sources of funds would be a better use of that rather than burdening GRU customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Mayor, we have nobody else on the line. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody from Parks, Rec, Cultural Affairs. Ms. Waite, I really do appreciate it. And we'll look forward to our next discussion in the next couple months here. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to address the caller about the Hippodrome. That is a city-owned building. So I just want to make sure that people at home watching and listening know that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so on to our last item, which is our administrative session, basically scheduling our items for the next quarter. So we're going to need, say, 1/2 to 1/3 of a meeting for wild spaces, is what I'm hearing. Commissioner Johnson, who I don't know if she's still with us. Oh, yes, you are. Good, good.
I'm here.
Yeah, so we have the continuation of the food systems item as well, that you asked to be continued on one of our GPC meetings. And so that's probably at least an hour and a half discussion. So I'm wondering if those two might, fit on a meeting, and then we could probably put on one other topic that's not a heavy duty necessarily lift. I am going to ask that on the February 11th meeting, we schedule a discussion of a pilot project for direct cash assistance, or sometimes called a universal basic income. There's a lot of really exciting things happening with that, and I'm not going to, kind of go over all of them. That's really what the discussion at that meeting will be for. But the long and the short of it is we're up against a bit of a deadline, and it's, this all just happened within the last month, but because of a generous donation from a private philanthropist to the organization Mayors for Guaranteed Income, they got about a $15 million donation to specifically assist cities in doing pilot projects for guaranteed income. And with that, so one thing, I guess let's not bury the lead. If they approve Gainesville's proposal, that would mean a minimum of $500,000 to go towards this project. It also comes with a paid fellow position that will coordinate and conduct all of the research. All of this is to gather research and data, to build the narrative of what works and what doesn't. I've been working very closely with Community Spring, and I don't want to commit them without them saying they're committed, but they are very interested in being the coordinating entity for this. They did have a direct cash assistance program during the spring, late spring, early summer to help victims of COVID. And are interested in partnering with us and really being the ones that sort of administer the program and help coordinate the data and research. So anyway, all that to say, the application deadline is early March. And so I really want to get this in front of the commission. We'll get the representatives from Mayors for Guaranteed Income on and can give you a sort of understanding of what they do, what their goals are, and answer any questions. We'll get folks from Community Spring on and talk about their role and then what role the city might have. And if we can put all that together, then we'll be able to submit our application and hopefully get approved for that funding. So anyway, I'm asking for February 11th because I think that would give us time to get ready for it, but early enough where we can follow up with the application. So that's what I know we have so far. Let me go to Commissioner A. Santos, and I'll get you next, Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, excited for us to move forward with that UBI. Hopefully we can put together a good project for that. I have 3 items I'd like to discuss. 2 I'd like to have on this quarter. 1 probably the very first meeting of the next quarter. The first one I'd like for us to place degendering our city code on one of the meetings. I'd also like to have a discussion on city lighting policy. Our city is very dark in certain areas, and a lot of it has to do with our actual code. I have friends who won't walk at night and they'll live around University Avenue because it's too dark, so that's one of the ones I'd like for us to discuss. And then I do have a policy paper coming on that one that should be ready by the end of January. And then the last item that I think we need to start on is really looking at our elections code and elections reform for our city elections. And this probably would like to do is after the spring elections, but our code, we're moving to the fall now, and our current code does not reflect us moving to the fall. Also, in previous meetings, Commissioner Ward brought up some other election reforms and things like that. And if we want to make those changes or do any kind of things, I think we need to do them this gap that we have, and then also be able to do them somewhat quickly so people who are running for office know what any changes might be. So I think this is the perfect timing for us to make those reforms. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to request that the update for the food, not the update, but the continuation of the discussion for the food access is on February 25th. And I feel like we're going to need maybe a little bit more than an hour because in addition to the discussion that we're going to have, I'm going to be presenting some additional ideas for us to consider.
Okay, that works for me. I think unless there's any objection for the February 25th, do the food, wild spaces, and the degendering, because I don't think the degendering is going to be a long, drawn-out conversation. Knowing my colleagues, I think we're going to be generally okay with that. We'll find out. So that gives most of the meeting for those 2 kind of heavy-duty topics, and that third. So if that works for folks, we'll start there. For the 11th, we could do lighting and Mayors for Guaranteed Income. Okay. So, okay, that's working so far. Commissioner Johnson, was that the only thing? You're good? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. great ideas, first of all, from what I've heard. I think these are really good things for us to bite into. The four items that I have of interest, this is really for 2021, just to give you all that preface. One of them we're already working on, and I wanted to get an update on the youth development policy workshops that we were preparing and getting prepared, because I don't think that'll need to come before the General Policy Committee this quarter if we're doing those workshops this quarter. Ostensibly, one of the workshops being sort of the wrap-up, that would essentially be the quote-unquote the general policy, and then we can move it to a commission meeting at a later date.
So,
The recording has stopped.
What did you do, Lee?
I clicked the camera. I believe, Commissioner, I believe those workshops have been scheduled. I don't have the dates in front of me.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. The other two items are on our strategic plan. One of them being vocational technical training. You all may have seen the Job Corps site is we are requesting for it to be disposed to the city. We are going to have a new administration. I don't want to read tea leaves into what that means for Job Corps in particular. I know that our last congressional representative and our current representative is from the same office and so is familiar with the issue. I think there's potential for us to see success in that disposition. And I really want us to, I think there's a great opportunity to either partner with Santa Fe or someone to get that facility back up to its glory. And it looks great. I took a tour a few months ago with Mr. Bredfeld and the owners, the managers per se of the facility. It's in great condition. There's just some things that have to be done to make sure that it's really brought up to speed. So I'd like for us to have a conversation on vocational technical training with an emphasis on the Job Corps site and how we want to proceed further with that. Not terribly time sensitive, so we can put that after the meeting on the 25th, whichever date that would be. And the second item, I've asked for research to come back, or the third item rather, I've asked for research to come back from Zariah's office regarding local Green New Deal opportunities. Again, new administration. Don't want to read into the tea leaves as to what that means for the federal Green New Deal, but other cities and counties have begun passing legislation, recommendations for building codes, recommendations for resiliency. We've already begun to make some of the changes with the new committee between the county and the city, being the climate change committee. But that only meets, and that's more for coordination between city and county. I'd like for us as a city to begin to focus on how we can build climate change resiliency. And again, it just came out recently that 2020 was the second hottest year on record. Certainly not something that is much to be proud of. So again, not time sensitive. That can be, again, in March. And the last item, I would really be okay with this being on one of the last general policies for this quarter, because as far as timing goes, I would very much like for this to be discussed towards the end so that it can have its discussion in the summer. And it's something that I brought up last year. We have research on it. The Strong Mayor government amendment to the charter. I think that is obviously a robust discussion. I've been working with our policy staff on it, and everyone needs to have their input given for that type of discussion. And I think it would be appropriate for us to begin at a general policy level. My thinking on that is that we will have research to be able to present that's been done by our research staff, but I'm also going to bring research and people who have had experience working with various different forms of government and their sort of pros and cons. But I'd very much like for that to be on the general policy agenda as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All those things sound fine for us to have conversations about and get more information on. One of the things that I've spoken with Mr. Feldman and Mr. Folston to get to get their thoughts on and get policy papers written for is the idea of creating, and I'm going to use the word department, but it doesn't have to be a department. I'm using department as a placeholder name. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a separate sort of thing, but a department of youth services, creating a new space within city government for programs to exist rather than having those programs exist within GPD. And it's a much bigger discussion, but I think the time is good for it. I think it's time for us to have that talk and to learn what the potential opportunities are there. You know, how it's clear that we have some very successful youth programs that are part of city government, specifically through GPD right now, Record House, Bold, that sort of thing. But it's also clear that we could do other things and that those programs might be able to flourish better in other parts of city government. I want to have the conversation about it. I want to include Chief Jones very specifically in those conversations because that's where his heart is, and he knows more about those programs than anybody does. But we've started research on that, and I would like to include that later in the quarter. So March meetings, maybe even April, but I'd like to get it scheduled, I think, for March. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Supportive of a discussion on the mayor's changes. So I guess one other thing too we've had before, the GPD update, kind of a quarterly update.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we could have that on January 28th since
Yes.
we're kind of looking light on the beginning of the period. And I guess one other question for the city manager, another kind of GPD, my brain is deflection programs and kind of that ordinance. Where does that stand, and where do you think that'd be something that could be brought back to the general policy committee for discussion?
Yeah, and I know that Mr. Feldman, staff has a couple items that they need to agenda as well. So if you want to tell us about those two items as well as any information you have on the deflect, I can give you some information on that too, Commissioner. Go ahead, Mr. Feldman.
So for the 28th, can do the GPD update centered around the programs and activities that we told you about last summer, and give you an update as to where we are in those, which includes the deflection program. So we can cover that with
Mr.
the
Feldman,
GPD
will
update. Yes.
in that, will you include an update on the negotiations with the state attorney, as well as any new information we have about the central receiving facility? I don't think there is much new. The city and county have put the money aside. It's really about finding the ongoing operational costs. But anyway, anything you have about the negotiations with state attorney as well. And then what were the items that staff needed to agenda?
So the commission asked us to come back at the January 28th meeting with the well-being index.
The what? A well-being index?
The well-being index. So we're prepared for that.
Okay.
And I believe it is at your second meeting in February. We believe we need to have a discussion about the GFT and bring you back the consultant's recommendation.
Okay, I think, can we do that in March? That February meeting's I think it's pretty full.
It is pretty full, but both general government and GRU need to build our budgets, and the GFT, I think, is a...
Would you be ready to do it on the 11th?
I can find out, and if we can, we'll certainly do that. I'm just told no consultant's report won't be back in time.
Okay. What's that?
Degendering to the 11th, or the wild spaces to the 11th?
We could move degendering to the 11th, and we could move wild spaces to March 25th. mean, that's not, 1 month is not gonna make a difference. It's, you know, it's just an update. So okay, so then, GFT on the 25th, on
Yeah,
February
so,
25th.
so I just received a note. We can make March work for the GFT.
Don't worry about it. We've got it. We fixed it. Okay, so.
I mean, I guess do
ahead.
we want to have that discussion right before an election or to have it after? I mean, just to be 100% honest, it might be a better discussion to have after
I
the
hear
election.
you. Okay. So March, GFT, we'll clarify all this at the end. March, GFT, February 25th, Wild Spaces. Okay, and then, we could probably, so I wanted to ask you, Mr. Feldman, as far as Job Corps goes, I know we're working on formalizing some potential partnerships, and, you know, we still have to talk with our newly elected member of Congress. Senator Ruby's office continues to be very helpful, and is well aware of our needs. When would you have, I don't want to put it on an agenda and not have any sort of meat on the bone. So when do you think we would actually know something where we would start getting to some decision points?
So the federal government has two disability paths to go through, more options, and we're waiting for them to determine which of those two they're going to go through. One is, and both of them are different processes. Hopefully by the end of February, we will have some sense as to where the new administration is on it. So I would say.
Okay, so we'll put that on March 25th. We'll put Job Corps on March 25th. Boy, that's probably a full meeting now with those two. Wild Spaces, food, we could do. Well, degendering we can do on the 11th. So I just don't know if we have room on the 25th. I mean, we could try. So climate resiliency. I don't know what that means. What are you, Commissioner, what are you hoping to accomplish with that item at a GPC meeting?
At that time, we'll have research finished by the research committee, and my hope is to be able to have some steps that we can begin to take actions on. Some of it may have to do with the comprehensive plan, and so that's why I want to align it this year. My hope is to be able to at least set up some policy direction, seeing where we can have local policy align with the federal New Deal that's being proposed. As far as the length of conversation, is that what you're trying to figure out?
Well, yeah, I mean, so we basically have some room on the January 28th meeting, but I don't know which of these things any of you suggested will be ready by then. You know, I don't know about the Department of Youth Services, if that would be ready by then. I mean, that's 2 weeks from now. Certainly not climate resilience. Strong mayor, it sounds like you need some time to put together the people and the research, so that's not ready. Commissioner Ward?
Mr. Mayor, the youth services, I mean, we could have a discussion, but I don't think, I don't think the research will be ready by then. I just asked for it a couple days ago.
Yeah.
We can have a broad discussion, but I don't know that we could be, that it would be.
I'd rather wait until we have
Yeah.
everything in front of us with any of these. I don't want to discuss something to come back and discuss again if we can avoid it. Commissioner Santos?
The degendering can be moved up to the 28th if you want to clear out room. That's already all ready.
Okay, that's still, so we have some room on the 11th then.
And then I was thinking for maybe the first meeting of the next quarter, we do the admin session, then we do the election reform and the mayor kind of change altogether, do a bunch of election stuff. I don't know if it's too much election stuff, but government stuff.
I mean, it's good to cluster those types of things. So whatever. So that's first meeting of Q3. Strong mayor. Election code. And then that's admin as well, administrative meeting. So that just has youth services and climate resilience out there. We may be able to do youth services on March 25th. Because I mean GFT is going to take a lot of time, but I think youth services is more about what would it look like, and then what do we want to try to move forward with as we get into budget. And that looks like Commissioner Climate Resilience will have to put on the next, on Q3. Because I just don't see, I don't know what, it's going to depend on when research comes back anyway, so. No, I mean, it would be next quarter, not this quarter.
In April?
I mean, yeah, sometime in April or May. It'll be we'll have to decide that at our first meeting in April. Commissioner Santos?
You already got me.
I got you, okay. Commissioner Ariola?
I just wanted to ask if when we have that discussion with the strong mayor amendment and the election, that we put the strong mayor discussion first. One of them is a system of government, the other is a system of elections, and I want to make sure we bifurcate the two as much as possible.
Okay.
And then just as a point, I think that I really want to have the youth services discussion. I think that you're going to see a lot of input into that discussion come from the workshops. So I'm not sure if that affects timing or not.
Well, it's on the March 25th as of right now.
Okay.
Commissioner Simmons?
Mayor, I just wanted to know when would staff come back with information on healthcare services and programming?
Mr. Feldman or Ms. Folson, Mr. Folson, do you have any update on the public health referral, where we are with that?
I'm going to need to get back to the commission on a date. I saw an update on some of the items, but I don't have a complete update.
Okay. That's pretty recent, so maybe at our, could you give us an update on that at our January 28th meeting?
Update on where we are, or
Yeah.
an update on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just where we are, timeline kind of stuff, yeah. So that'll be relatively brief. Okay, so here's what we have, Madam Clerk. January 28th, the Gainesville Police Department update, Wellbeing Index, degendering city codes, and update on the public health referral and where we are with those items. That's it. February 11th, direct cash assistance and city lighting policies. And that's it for that. February 25th, the wild spaces, public places items. There's 4 of those. Let me go back and remind you what those are. A discussion of Cone Park, particularly the pavilion, but we'll just say Cone Park. Discussion of Tom Petty Park, Glen Springs Park facility, and Ironwood. And then also the discussion of the food systems, and you'll have to get with Commissioner Johnson for the additional items that she wants to bring up and any backup that might come with that. Those will be the only 2 on that agenda. And then March 25th, the general fund transfer, Job Corps, and youth services. That's it for that. And then the first meeting in April will be our administrative meeting, as well as a discussion of a charter amendment for strong mayor and our election code.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, this is City Clerk Michelle Gainey, and I was inquiring if we can squeeze in on the dates that there are only 2 items on the agenda. We need to start rolling in the reports from the boards and committees that we have to report back to you all. Yeah.
Yeah, so we can definitely do probably, well, we can do several on the 11th. I know I talked to Mr. Folson, you're working with them to make sure that their reports are direct and concise. I assume that you're gonna try to work with them so they all follow the same format. So once you figure out how much time will be allotted for each board, you know, I think that we would have close to 2 hours on the 11th potentially for those. Other than, well, and then the April meeting, I think there'll be some time for some board reports as well. The rest of the meetings, I don't know, if anybody's ready on the 28th, we could probably do a few as well. Not too many, but we could probably do a couple.
Okay.
Like that, it just, I guess, put it out, hey, if anybody's already done with their, well, I guess they are, they have their annual report, they're just gonna present it, right? So, anyway, I think that's where they would fit in this time. And I'll work with you, Madam Clerk. I mean, if they start, once you start getting a better idea of who's ready and how much time they need, we can add them at agenda review. Commissioner Simmons?
Mayor, thank you. Have we, do we have the CRA update anywhere? Did we plan on doing something with
Mr. Feldman, what's the plan with updating the work of the GCRA?
We're happy to make a presentation at your convenience.
I'm thinking maybe regular city commission. We could do it in the afternoon.
I just want to make sure that it gets on.
Yeah. So, I think when there's something to update, then just if you'll put that on a city commission agenda, Mr. Feldman. When there's something substantial. Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to confirm, you got the well-being index on the 28th, is that right?
Well-being's on January 28th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk, did you have any questions or follow-up?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Any other questions from the commission? All right, we have ourselves a quintet of agendas for general policy. That's some heavy-duty work. We're going to be doing this winter and spring. Okay, with that, we're on to our next item, member comment. All right, so our next meeting will be 2 weeks from today, January 28th. And until then, sorry, getting like the old grumpy man, but we are heading in the absolute wrong direction with COVID. As if people feel like there's a major announcement that it's over. You know, thousands of people lined up at bars. I drove by a basketball court yesterday and it was packed with at least 20 people, you know, breathing heavily, running up and down. We've got to keep doing the work, and I'm guessing a lot of the people that need to hear that are not watching this, or nor will they watch this. But we're in a very precarious place right now, and we've got to continue doing those little things: wearing a mask, staying distant, not going to large gatherings, or we're gonna be in a world of hurt here. So if everyone can try to spread the word and be reaffirming and positive with folks. We know that public shaming is the absolute worst thing you can do. It has the least effective outcome. So as supportive as you can be and offering, kind guidance would be greatly appreciated. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.